Okay, all right. Welcome on in to the first show of the week. This is, of course, DCU Daily on Oh So Curious. I'm going to be your host, and the most, hopefully, because you just got me today. I'm, of course, Dan. We got a lot to get into on today's show. As you probably clicked into the live show thumbnail, you know we're going to talk about what went wrong with Supergirl. Seems like every big outlet out there is taking their shot at trying to figure out, and you know, there's some good reasons and numbers, and we'll get into all of that as to like why things didn't work out and what does that mean for not only Supergirl but also, you know, the greater DCU and of course, you know, the DC Studios, which is still a, you know, relatively young burgeoning studio, and hey, there's about to be new ownership on the lot. So how does that affect the future of James Gunn, Peter Safran? What does that mean for the future of other characters like Supergirl, who aren't necessarily the big hitters like your Superman and Batmans of the world, right? So we'll get into that. Of course, speaking of your big superhero characters, Spider-Man Brand New Day is set to be the biggest opening weekend since the last one, so we'll talk about that, or certainly at least Deadpool and Wolverine I think was the previous high, because it's looking at a 200 million plus opening weekend, which I believe the last time that happened was Deadpool and Wolverine. So we'll talk about that because we have our first long range forecast for the box office. The Odyssey as well, we're looking at that too, and of course Michael just broke a box office record, so we'll get into that. And did James Gunn just secretly cast a Batman for the DCU? And he's not telling us? Wouldn't be the first time. Well, not the Batman part, but you know, wouldn't be the first time that he's keeping things from the fans. Maybe for the right reasons. But we'll get into that. And of course, we'll do that and so much more. Mount Rushmore Monday. Didn't even mention that. But hey, you know what? Without further ado, let's check in with our favorite, you know, Knuff, Ryan Gosling, and then we'll get the show started.
It doesn't seem to matter what I do. Number two.
All right, mister, I need to paint my abs on to get nominated. You don't see Robert Downey doing that.
You're kidding. You're kidding. I can't open the envelope without the...
Warner Brothers is heading back into the Matrix with a new movie in the works.
Wonder what other surprises are in store.
I want to be Bruce Wayne. I like that. You're gonna love me.
There's the shot right there. That.
Okay, we don't need to see chorus.
Right there.
You look ridiculous.
Well, not no more, he don't.
What, dude? I can barely understand you. Your accent's insane.
What the
Give me a hand up. Nope, I'm actually okay. Thank you very much. Oh, wow. Wow.
Okay, all right. Lots to get into on today's show. I got a lot of your Mount Rushmores for best animated films, or just animation films, you know, like you pick your Mount Rushmores. I think there's 6 from you guys. Then I got John and Liz's picks as well as mine, so we'll get into that later. But of course, you know, it's going to be a lot of Supergirl talk today. There's going to be a lot of Spider-Man talk, I'm sure. We'll get into the Comcast. I didn't even mention it earlier. Comcast just announced that it's going to split itself in 2. What's going on behind that? Like, you know, like what are they up to over there at Comcast? We'll get into that too. But before I do that, I just want to welcome some of the folks in the chat. I got Monique in the chat here. Monique, we do have your Mount Rushmore picks coming up later, saying howdy y'all, marvelous Monday to ya. It's red lentil soup paired with BLT sandwiches made with heirloom tomatoes and micro lettuce. Damn. All right. As always, you know, on the up and up. Enterprising saying, I'm not even sad anymore. I am just pissed off over how hyperbolic these stupid headlines and sexist a-holes have been. Millie doesn't deserve this. Well, I don't know what headlines you're looking into. A lot of what I'm going to get into later is based on, you know, numbers and basically what's going on. It's not, I mean, there's going to be some commentary on, like, we will get into the whys of it all with Supergirl, but I'm not talking about stuff that you might be seeing on Reddit or Discord and stuff. It's the big outlets, and they've got some, you know, metrics, social metrics, as well as, you know, other research firms that work with the Hollywood studios to kind of figure out like how, you know, much people want to go see a movie. So we'll get into that. So don't you worry, Enterprising, we will get into that. Hello, Nelson. What's up, everybody? What's up with you, Nelson? How are you doing today? Enterprising again saying, hire more script doctors for your creative team. Consider a vet co-writer, James, to partner with Anna if you keep her on. Well, look, we will get into that later. I don't think it's as simple as that, but we will get into that again as we go into the show. MTG, hello. We also have your picks for Mount Rushmore Monday coming up. So at the end of Man of Tomorrow, Batman drops in revealing he's the Man of Tomorrow. Dun dun dun. Yeah, well, we'll see. We'll see. I highly doubt that's going to happen. As if there weren't enough superhero characters, enough meta humans in Man of Tomorrow already. But we will see. I don't know if they're going to have a Batman and Wonder Woman show up. It's just at that point you might as well. You don't have to call it Justice League, but that would very much. I think people will start. If they did go down that road, that they will start to feel like, oh, okay, now we're getting into that whole. Batman v Superman, we got to get a little bit of Aquaman in there. We got to get a little bit of Flash in there, even if it's on a, found footage, camera footage off a flash drive that Wonder Woman got from Lex Luthor illegally, that Batman initially stole, that she stole from him footage. We don't need that. And Batman post-credit scene in Clayface is also most likely not going to happen, and we'll get into that too, because later on in terms of like who's being cast as Batman and why or why not that may be true. So we will definitely do that. Yeah, no, hey, Enterprising, look, here's what I'll say. Again, we got a ways to go before we talk about Supergirl, but I'll just say this. It's not the end of the world. It's one movie, and there's a lot of Monday morning quarterbacking going on, but at the same time, again, what we will talk about will be based in research and numbers, so that way we're not just, talking hyperbolically. And where there is speculation or we are trying to project ahead, I'll mention that explicitly. So, yeah. James Gunn, we need. Well, we'll see. We'll see, MTG, which way that swings. But as we usually start on Mondays, we go into the box office report. Now, the big box office report for the weekend was that Toy Story won the weekend, with over $70 million. Supergirl came in around half that number at number 2. And then Obsession came in number 3. The reason I'm not going to dive too deep into that is because I'm saving that for later for the Supergirl conversation. So what I will do is talk about, of course, the box office tracking, the long-term box office tracking that has dropped now for Spider-Man Brand New Day. We also have numbers for the Odyssey, as well as, some of the other movies that are coming out between now and, of course, 5 weeks from now when Spider-Man hits the theaters. So as you see in the headline here from Box Office Theory, Sean Robbins does a great job with these. He was talking about how, well, the box office tracking for Spider-Man Brand New Day, it looks like 200 million plus domestic opening is in the books as of right now. That's looking like it's very feasible, which would be the biggest since, the Deadpool and Wolverine. The last time a movie opened to that high a number at the domestic box office, over 200 million, was Deadpool and Wolverine. Before that, it was Spider-Man No Way Home. So, of course, it's no surprise given the pre-sales. In fact, before we get into the Spider-Man Brand New Day numbers, I just wanted to quickly highlight the chart that we have here on screen. Well, let's see if I can zoom into this. There we go, a little bit bigger. You got Minions and Monsters coming out this week. I was meant to go see it today, but I didn't get a chance to because I was, going through all your Mount Rushmore Monday picks. But Liz did, and Liz will be talking about it tomorrow on the show. But yeah, Minions and Monsters looking like 105 million debut. It's the 100 million, I think, is like the average. Most numbers are looking at that. That tends to be, about where this holiday weekend is going to get us. And then they're looking at, a little over double that number for the pretty much the entirety of its run. So you're looking at potentially, 230 something million dollars for a completion. On the low end, it could be as little as 51 million. In the middle, you got around 83 million for Minions and Monsters. Young Washington is looking like it will have a decent debut at around 28 million potentially, and could finish out at 105 million. Evil Dead Burn also there. That's something that I'm sure John is going to be excited about. That's looking like it's somewhere going to be between 45 to 75 million dollar opening. That's going to open a week after the Minions movie comes out, so it won't have to compete with that as its opening weekend. And yeah, so that's not a bad number to start off with. Actually, 45 to 75 is the overall number. 21 to 30 is the opening weekend. I'm misreading that chart. So then you look at Moana, the live action Moana. It's looking like it's going to open to 70 to 89 million dollars, which, look, that's not meant to be good, right? Like, they were saying, oh no, this movie's in trouble for Disney. But even then, it's, let's take Supergirl, for example. 70 million is what Supergirl would have loved to have had, because that would have given it a shot at number one at the weekend the box office. But, Moana, even though it's not going to do terribly well, is looking at 70 to 89 million, which is about an 8% drop from the original update that they had for this. So the number has been dropping for it, similar to the Minions and Monsters. The number has dropped a little bit, about 10% from what they thought it would do, but still it's expected to do around 250 million domestically once it's all said and done. Now the Odyssey is the big one here. The Odyssey is predicted to open somewhere between 97 to 132 million. You average that out, that's about 118 million, which would be the biggest original movie opening weekend probably, I think, at least in a decade or so. It's like in a long time. It leaves Project Hail Mary in the dust. It leaves Michael in the dust. It certainly leaves even Oppenheimer in the dust, which came in just under 100 million in its opening weekend. So actually, no, it was around 80 something million. I remember it was in the low 80s. So 118 million would easily be Christopher Nolan's biggest opening weekend since the Dark Knight trilogy. The Dark Knight Rises being the last one. So they're predicting a pretty good number there, and then they're predicting that the movie is going to finish up at somewhere in the low 400s, like 430 million. That's just domestic. If that's the domestic number, which would mean it's around 3.5 times what it's made in its opening weekend, I mean, it could be, I was saying it before, it could be Nolan's first billion-dollar movie since the Dark Knight trilogy. So, yeah. Nelson, I haven't seen Toy Story 5 yet, unfortunately, but I'm trying to get to it this week. Don't you worry. I have to catch up on some of my movies. But Liz has, and Liz will be on tomorrow, so she'll talk about it. She called it her second perfect movie of the year after Project Hail Mary. Monique saying, obviously Supergirl isn't for me, but being gleeful a movie is a flop is baffling to me. Yeah, look, we're going to talk about it again later. It's going to be interesting. I'm going to, try to keep, again, we're here to talk about it in as objective a way as possible. And, on the channel here, we generally try to be upbeat, right? We've been pumping the drums and whatever the metaphor is for Supergirl for months now, so we even have that later in the show. So yeah, we all want it to do well. I mean, Michael has had great legs at the box office. So yeah, I mean, you're right, Monique, that will be pretty much the same idea behind the Odyssey. If Michael can make $1 billion, which it's very close to doing, then I bet you that, the Odyssey will as well. Hey, Georgie's here. Hello to Steven. How are you doing, man? John is not here today. John is, been looking at all the social media reactions to Supergirl, and he's feeling a little down. So he's taking a bit of a break because, he wants to get away from the Supergirl darkness of Supergirl, all that chat. So we'll see, when John is feeling better, I'm sure he'll join the conversation. Oh, there goes Georgie. All right. Okay. Monique was saying hi to you, Georgie. Okay. All right. Michael is Michael's box. We all knew Michael was going to do great. It's just, it took longer to get there for me. I thought it would be at $1 billion a lot sooner, but you know what? Better late than never, right? By the way, I am keeping track on the Netherlands-Morocco game. That's an extra time right now. I watched earlier the penalty shootout where Germany got knocked out by Paraguay. Like, holy cow, that was awesome. But hello to Movie Spud. Didn't get to see Supergirl this weekend. Honestly, don't know yet when I'll see it yet. Oh, okay. Well, we do have your picks in Mount Rushmore Monday later, so, good to have you here. Yeah, Michael has had a great box office. Monique saying, y'all are so hardworking, you deserve a break. That's true. That's part of it. I think it's well deserved for John, especially because he's on, most days, even when I'm not able to join or I'm in halfway through the show. So I think John deserves a bit of a break. Well, here's the thing, Enterprise. Look, if you're being bombarded by the Snyder cultists, let's say, which I don't think that's the only loud minority that's bombarding Supergirl. There's definitely people who are happy to see stuff fail, which is, I don't understand that part of the fandom, but get that out of your feed. Like, hit the 3 dots, not interested, remove them from your feed. Don't bring that into your algorithm. Like, you can try to knock that out of your algorithm. I try not to pay attention to that stuff. I don't follow accounts that sort of perpetuate false narratives about things. That's why usually the bigger outlets, you get better or reporting from them, or you can go to like other YouTube channels where they're not just bashing things for the sake of bashing them, right? We try to be pretty positive here. Although there's when something's not good, we're not afraid to call it out. Steven, that's a good question. If DC will be at Comic-Con, I don't know, honestly. I'd imagine they would, at least for Lanterns. I think that was talked about. I think that much is happening. They will do a Lanterns, a panel, but that's more TV side, so I don't know how big of a deal that's going to be. I would imagine maybe some kind of showcase for Clayface would be warranted, although, again, James Gunn hasn't really been super, I don't know, into the idea of doing these big Comic-Con events. He's certainly not going to be there, I don't think, for Man of Tomorrow, because they'll still be filming the movie. So, like we'll get into it later, they're only like a month and a half into it right now, so I bet you they still have a couple of more months at least of filming left for Man of Tomorrow. And while they did fly out to the Supergirl premiere, I think that was more because they wanted to show up and show out for Supergirl, because that's if you got David Cornsweet, Nicholas Hoult, Rachel Brosnahan, James Gunn, Peter Safran, and David Zaslav all walking the red carpet, that's a big deal. Whereas for Comic-Con, it's just a weird time, the timing, like it makes a lot more sense. Marvel's gonna have a huge presence, and I don't think DC's gonna be able to beat it. So I think DC's just gonna do their stuff with the two projects that are left for this year, and if they do it for both the movie and the TV show, and then they'll just kind of keep their powder dry for probably next year when we'll get to see, hopefully, I mean, with them talking about Man of Tomorrow. No, again, we'll talk about Supergirl in detail later. I think it's been interesting, that all the analysis that that I'll get into. It's definitely going to be, there's been signs, let's say, the Supergirl was not going to do, and the closer we got to release, the more obvious it became. Yeah, well, Instagram and Facebook trolls, just silence the noise if you can. And it's hard sometimes, I know, but I pay no attention to those. Yeah, I think one movie is not going to take down an entire cinematic universe, right? Like, people really didn't like Iron Man 2. The MCU's still here, so you know what, X-Men 97 does look nice. But let's talk again, speaking of Marvel, let's talk about Spider-Man Brand New Day. I mentioned earlier that Spider-Man Brand New Day is looking really, really positive right now in terms of its opening weekend at the box office. So here, I wanted to point out this particular sentence from Sean. He mentioned that, early pre-sales are on absolute fire, ranking amongst the best ticket launches of the last few years, and even popping up in Fandango's all-time top 10 first days. So if that gives you a sense of the excitement around Spider-Man Brand New Day, like, of all the movies I've tried to get early tickets to these recent weeks, I think Spider-Man Brand New Day was the hardest, even harder than The Odyssey, like, believe it or not. So yeah, I mean, Marvel is obviously having a big year because they have a couple of big projects. And again, we'll talk about it later, in terms of why Spider-Man, obviously, we all knew that Spider-Man was going to do great at the box office. It's Spider-Man, right? Like, next year, Batman Part 2 is going to do great because it's Batman. It's just, we'll get into it more later when we talk about Supergirl, but I do feel like we're past that peak superhero era of movies when you could just make a Guardians of the Galaxy, and if it was a really good movie, then it would do bonkers money like the first Guardians did. And while I'm not saying that's entirely impossible, and I do think, like, comparing the quality of the first Guardians to Supergirl is a bit of a disservice to the first Guardians. That movie is a lot better than Supergirl was. And, ultimately, I think what it comes down to, again, we'll talk about it in more detail later. James Gunn knows this. We have talked about it many a times. Good but not great doesn't do it for fans anymore. They'll come at you with their knives out. And that's what's happening with Supergirl. It was kind of mediocre. I mean, it's not even just DC. Like, I know Enterprise and you're like, congrats, Marvel, you win again. One doesn't have to lose for the other one to win. That's never. It's the whole industry, and we'll get into Peter Safran talking about it later. And Kevin Feige has mentioned it many times. The whole genre, kind of floats or sinks together. A rising tide does lift all boats. If one DC movie does great, that will raise this, the floor and ceiling for a Marvel movie, and vice versa. So it's not about, like, oh, DC versus Marvel. Let's be honest. Like, that's, depending on what metrics you're looking at, one won that battle a long time ago. Depending on what metrics you're looking at, it's really not a competition. I know that, they both want to do well, but and yeah, Superman, was a higher grossing than any Marvel movie last year, but you look at, I don't know, like just the fact that Superman made more money than the three Marvel movies. All three of those Marvel movies did not do very well, even the ones that were, really well reviewed. So I think we're getting to the point now where the superhero genre isn't just you're hitting home runs out of the park just by doing the bare minimum. 2023 DC EU movies were an example of that. Hello to Kabuk Lu saying worldwide debut ended up being 8% worse than WB originally reported. Yes, that's true. Yeah, I'll get into that. I'll get into that later with Supergirl because the number kind of came down a little bit because, and it's not that WB was lying. What always happens, Kabuk, is basically, and I hope I'm pronouncing your name right, the actuals come out on Monday. So the studio will give you their number on Sunday, their reporting, but that's still a bit of an estimate. That's a very good educated guess, but it's not the final number. The final tally, they call the actuals, come out on Monday when all the numbers are actually tallied up, because movie theaters are still open well into the night on Sunday, right? So you can't literally get every ticket sales number in real time. So the actuals usually kind of go up or down a little bit. So that's the same with Supergirl, same with any other movie. It's nothing, too controversial to talk about. And yeah, the Minions movie is going to come out this week, and there's even more movies than the Minions. There's another counter programming smaller movie that's coming out. I'm forgetting the name of right now. Toy Story 5 is there's no end in sight in terms of how many people are going to want to go see it, especially for another holiday weekend. So Supergirl, Obsession, it was number 3 this weekend at the box office because it's continuing to again be a big hit with the younger audiences, which aren't going to some of these other movies we're talking about, like Master of the Universe or Disclosure Day or Supergirl. So yeah, Supergirl, I have a feeling Supergirl might not even be in the top 5 in a second weekend. That's how bad it could get. But let's not jump too far ahead, shall we? Hi, Sam D, saying studios can't take those risks anymore. That's why they are fast-tracking AI VFX. Well, look, AI has been a part of VFX workflows for years. They just didn't call it artificial intelligence. I think that's an overly simplistic way of defining. There's a lot of AI, like artificial, basically what today's AI isn't really in art AI in the sense like you see it in the movies. AI today in most, real world scenarios, like the VFX industry, they're tools. They're a set of tools. Basically, they're advanced algorithms, and whether it's generative AI or otherwise, they're still advanced algorithms or predictive algorithms, whatever the case is. And they're there to help as a tool. They're not really doing the work for, and all of a sudden putting VFX artists out of jobs because they're not smart enough. There's a reason why, you have all these hallucinations to deal with, even on the high end. And as somebody who's worked in the industry, I can tell you, like, it's a tool in the tool belt of VFX artists. It does help do somewhat, especially some of the remedial work, like when you're trying to rotoscope somebody out of a shot. Using something like an AI algorithm that's trained on that stuff will help save you a lot of time from doing it manually. But you still have to get it to the point where it's able to do the kind of work that a roto, artist can do. I don't know, like will take 3-4 days to work on. Can an AI tool turn that into something that they could do in a day's time? Still not quite there yet. But it's getting better, and that's just one example. There's a lot of like other mesh tracking tools and stuff, and AI has been built into Photoshop. AI tools have been built into Photoshop, like when you do clone stamping and stuff like that, or like in Premiere they've had it, for After Effects they've had it for a while. You just like an object removal tool. It's a lot of it is marketing, and I don't think it's gonna start making movies for studios anytime soon. Yeah, well, there's again, but it's still a tool, right, Sam? So it's still a tool. It's going, and in machine learning is a very powerful tool. It's been around for a long time, by the way. Like they used to be called neural networks, which is a different way of going about doing something similar. But directors choosing AI performers, I eventually define eventually. Like I feel like at a level where it's going to affect our movie going, especially in the big summer and Christmas months, That's probably going to take, I don't know, like at least 10, 15 years. And even then, I don't know, like it's too far ahead to think about like AI performance. Like if anything, right now, the winds are flowing in the complete opposite direction. We talked about Tilly Norwood for so long, and like nobody wants her to have anything to do with a big feature film. Although I heard that some studio wanted I'm like, it's not a real like, how does that work even, you know? And it's not like me just like, oh no, in my caveman days, no AI, stay away from me, don't you take my job, don't tread on me. It's not about that. It's more the tool isn't, it's not quite there yet. It's not even close to being there yet. So and acting is like the most human, one of the most human forms of art, where you literally just as an actor, your job is to just be, not literally but sometimes literally, but mostly figuratively, be naked in front of the audience. You lay yourself bare. You're vulnerable in front of the audience, whether it's an audience of your crew and the cameras, or on the stage when you got to do it. It's all live, or on live television. There's like soap operas and stuff. You're just laying yourself bare. Can an AI replicate that yet? It's still it's more predictive algorithms. It's not really. It's not. They don't know that. It doesn't know the context of what it's generating. It's just predicting what the best answer may or may not be in that particular situation was prompted for. And that's where you get hallucinations. Like, that's how you get, like, and you have an AI proofread something for you, and all of a sudden it's changed the dates on something, and you're like, the dates were right, the time was right, those are objective facts, but the AI doesn't know that. It's just what it generates. It's just like, oh, it could be a Saturday, that sounds like a good day. No, it things on Sunday. Like, anyway, now I'm going into a rabbit hole. Talking about the Spider-Man Brand New Day opening weekend. You have been looking at the numbers for a while on screen. It's looking like it's going to open anywhere between $212 to $255 million opening weekend. You average that out, $228 million opening weekend. That's got to be like the biggest opening weekend certainly since Deadpool and Wolverine. It's pretty much in the neighborhood of Spider-Man Brand New, No Way Home. So it could be one of, if not the biggest opening weekend of the year. Like Avengers Doomsday, I'm sure is going to do big numbers, but 228 is a big number. It's not quite all the way to No Way Home levels, but this is 5 weeks out, and the buzz is only going to grow. So it's very possible that the number keeps climbing. And they're predicting that the movie's ultimately going to end up doing probably around 570 million domestically, which is basically a little over doubling its opening weekend, which is great. Spider-Man is the old reliable for Marvel. It always has been. I mean, this is why I would say, like, look, Marvel Studios really loved the idea that they were able to get their hands on Spider-Man for the MCU, because for Sony, it meant you take what was a struggling franchise for them at the time and you pair it up with the It franchise at the moment, which, was the MCU. And for Marvel, they brought literally their single most popular character into the fold for the first time. That hadn't been the case for decades, since they sold the rights to Sony for the Spider-Man movies. So it's been a very mutually beneficial relationship, and obviously it's been the last two Spider-Man movies have made over $1 billion. Even the Homecoming made over 800 million. That's basically like, the high mark. The 800 million was like the high mark of the Tobey Maguire days. Andrew Garfield's movies even made over 700 apiece. So even when Spider-Man was reportedly mediocre, he was still making bank. So yeah, I think Spider-Man is the old reliable. There's a very good chance this might be looking at a $2 billion worldwide run. We'll see. The domestic total would have to be higher than 570 million. But hey, Spider-Man Brand New Day, it's looking like it's gonna do fantastically well at the box office. But I mentioned earlier, so let's kind of quickly talk about this. Michael finally passed Oppenheimer as the biggest biopic of all time at the box office with $977.4 million. So now that gives it, basically the undisputed record. It had already passed Bohemian Rhapsody for like the biggest musical biopic of all time. We were talking about it last week. It was a few $1 million away, and now it sits a little over 20 million, possibly even less depending on when you're watching this, from $1 billion. I think Lionsgate has done a fantastic job of leaving this movie in theaters. It's clearly been doing good business throughout the summer months, and people coming up and watching it again and again. There's obviously a huge fan base. This movie is doing great domestically and internationally. It's not a 50-50 split at the box office, but it is, pretty healthy. It's not like this movie is being driven entirely by the domestic numbers or the international numbers. Like you've seen recently, the Fast and Furious movies, they've started to kind of crater domestically, and they need a lot of the international audience to show up for them to be profitable. Michael has had a pretty balanced, healthy approach. It's similar to like how Wonder Woman did. It did really well domestically. It's one of the highest gross. It's like one of the top 10 highest grossing domestic movies of all time. Like you got to give, Gal Gadot credit. I mean, her and Patty Jenkins for what they did there, and internationally it did well too. It didn't do as well as Michael, but Michael now is the highest grossing biopic of all time. So there you go. I don't know. I think like Oppenheimer is definitely the better movie. I don't think Michael is going to be winning too many Oscars like Oppenheimer did. They're going to the penalty shootout over there. Wow, 2 penalty shootouts in one day. It's interesting. And if Netherlands goes down to Morocco, woo, that'll be another big upset. Brazil barely escaped today in their matchup. Anyway, you guys let me know what you think about that, with Oppenheimer now falling to Michael in that the category of biopics at the box office. But speaking of Michael, Nia Long, who's of course returning with Ice Cube for Are We There Yet 3, which I forgot what they were calling it. Are We Home Yet or something? Whatever. Basically, Are You There? Are We There Yet 3? Nia Long, that's what I love her from originally. She was praising recently, of course, Jafar Jackson, saying it was a joy watching you transform into your uncle right before our eyes. And you know what? She played the mother on screen. I'm pretty sure she'll be back for the sequel, and I can't wait to see what they turn that into. Hopefully, it'll be a more even keel take on Michael Jackson's life and career, rather than, Michael Jackson's a god. He, created, he gave us world peace, or he solved the gang violence in LA just by bringing him to a studio for a dance rehearsal. I don't know, but hey, Michael could be a $2 billion franchise if the first movie is doing $1 billion and the second one is as good if not better. Yeah, I think 2 billion would definitely, I think that's definitely potentially on the menu. But yeah, you guys let me know, what do you think about that box office report? Again, Supergirl talk will continue later in the show, but Michael doing something that I didn't think would be possible for quite some time. Although we talked about it being $1 billion movie, so I suppose that it would add up. If it was going to make $1 billion, it would have to beat Oppenheimer's box office. So anyway, that's Pootie Tang levels great. Yeah. Thank you, Enterprising, for the laughs. All right, well, let's move on past that. Let's get into MCU Weekly. We got some photos. We got some we got more set photos. We got more set videos. So let's get into those for a moment. Of course, we know Elektra is back, and yeah, we know Jessica Jones is back. We know pretty much the whole Defenders team is back. We got more set photos here from the set of Daredevil Born Again Season 3. More on that rooftop fight. It looks like not only is it going to be Luke Cage throwing people around, but maybe Jessica Jones as well. Kristen Ritter on set. We saw a video of Mike Coulter rehearsing a while ago. Then of course there's more video of Elodie Yung back as Elektra. I don't know if you guys saw this here. Looks great. I like the costume. I thought Elodie Yung was kind of underrated in the role. But yeah, great. She had a great show on Fox a while ago. Was it Cleaning Lady? I forget. It was that's the one where Eva DiDomenici is also on too, I think. But yeah, more they were doing like fireworks, with the Brooklyn Bridge in the foreground. Seems like they're filming something there. So I don't know if you were in the city and you saw this going. Or actually, this was this is a miniature. Never mind. This is a miniature that they were working with. So it does look like they're trying to film it somewhat practically, but I don't know if that means it's something to do with a new mayor in town, but it definitely looks very, very interesting. So yeah, that looks fun. I like this footage. It is indeed marvelous, Enterprising. Indeed it is. Okay. But You know what's more interesting? What's more interesting is, of course, the new suit. It's on the thumbnail. We can't not talk about it. We have the red and black costume, and we have an HD photo of it that's been circulating. Here's the photo. You guys let me know, what do you think about this new suit? What are your thoughts on this new suit for Daredevil Born Again? You got the red double D's. You got a new helmet. There's more detailed suit photos floating on the internet with the small bits and pieces and like all the texturing. I don't want to go too deep into it, but it looks pretty fire to me. I like this look. I think like going with a very high high saturation red suit, I don't know, was going to be the right way to go. This kind of is a good mix between, you get the red, especially get the red double D's that they've been hinting at for a while, and then you still keep some of the black in there, which again, makes him a little more stealthy and stuff. It does look like they have some green markers there. You got the green tape on his arm. I don't know if that's just for tracking purposes or why that's being put there. So it will be interesting to see what that turns into, in the show itself. But yeah, I mean, look, I know we all want to see that red suit, but maybe that's what we get at the end of the show. Maybe if he eventually got that suit, that would be like basically the last season of the show, meaning that it's probably not a bad thing if you want more Daredevil in your future, that he doesn't have quite that final suit yet. I think they're probably going to build up to that. Yeah, it is harsh lighting, but I mean, what are we going to do? Like, they're shooting at night. This is obviously not, a shot from the camera that they're filming on. This is not how it's going to look in the show. It's probably going to look a lot better. The black won't feel like it's like, light gray. But hello to Figure Drawing in the chat. It's going to look better. Marvel coming with a vengeance, rebound tour from Phase 4, yeah. No, they've been working on it. Like Kevin Feige has said it, like multiple other people have said it. Marvel has really pulled back on production in terms of like going for quality over quantity, and at the same time trying to give us annual seasons of TV shows like the way it used to be back in the day. So on the movie side, less is better than more, as long as it's good, of course. Wow, Morocco just missed their first penalty. Anyway, so the guy in his garage has become a fashion designer now. Well, I don't know MTG about that. They barely showed that actor shirtless in season 2, just saying. Yeah, dude, if you're talking about Charlie Cox, the man is ripped. You just got to look at his gym photos. Go on his Instagram, you'll see it. But yeah, let's see, what do we got? We got a photo here. Or not, this is a video from the set. Kind of obstructed. There's looks like one of the assistant directors on set is standing in front, but you do see Daredevil kind of walking in the background, and clearly you see they're filming that. There you got multiple cameras, you got sound there, a lot of walking into doors in buildings. Like we saw Elodie Young's Elektra doing something similar. I'm like, do we really need to see the characters like walking in through doors? Like, I feel like that's the part you usually cut out in editing. Like, you're like, you go in the direction of the door, and then you cut to the shot of them like in the door or entering from the other side. Nobody wants to see the back of somebody like walking into it, unless it's like, oh, he's gonna walk in and kill a bunch of motherfuckers in a hallway. But anyway, yeah, you know what? I like the suit. It's not quite the suit everybody's been wanting, but it's getting most of the way there. It looks slick. Like, I would really like this suit if it showed up in a big movie. Like, if it showed up in like if Daredevil were to show up in one of the Avengers movies. So yeah, it's interesting stuff indeed. Well, let's move on to Spider-Man. From Daredevil to Spider-Man, we may yet see Daredevil in Spider-Man. Those are the rumors. But speaking of brand new day, it does look like we have some new information from Daniel Rickman. So Daniel Rickman, of course, the scooper, he tends to get some good information. He's not always right, but he tends to be right more often than not. He was saying that Spidey has a chip in his neck in the movie. What is this chip? Why? Who put it there? Why? According to the theories out on the internet, it may be because that chip is what helps Spider-Man essentially be immune to Sadie Sink's powers, her mysterious, abilities. So the chip might be like technology that either maybe is developed by Mark Ruffalo, maybe it's developed by the Department of Damage Control. And so we might see that play a big role. Again, it's coming from Daniel Rickman, so take it for what it is. He also was saying that Tobey Maguire did film a scene for Avengers Doomsday, and he did it in a mocap suit, mostly because they were redesigning his actual Spider-Man suit. Not a total upgrade, but basically it's a Netherlands just missed their penalty. Still 1-1. Wow. Anyway, but basically the idea would be that Tobey Maguire's suit that we will see him wear, hopefully in, let's say, Avengers Secret Wars, if he were to like shoot more scenes down the road later this summer, it would be an upgraded version of what we saw in Brand New Day. Sorry, no, with No Way Home and like his own movies. It's not like some kind of like big tech enhanced suit, or it's not like a total redesign. It's just they didn't have the final design of the suit. And you know, Marvel does this all the time. They're like, we'll do it in post. Like they did that for the time travel suits in Avengers Endgame. So it looks like, according to Daniel Rickman, when they had Tobey Maguire shoot some of his stuff, which I'm sure was on a sound stage and like a green screen surround stage, and he was wearing a mocap suit, and they're gonna, you know, replace that in post with his upgraded suit, which he might be able to wear if he has a role in Secret Wars. So yeah, it's interesting. It is interesting indeed, much like you were saying they're enterprising. So we'll find out, you know, how that all plays out. But let's keep going. I believe that's all the rumor we had there. I will say, did you guys see this new ad? We got more footage of Spider-Man swinging around. Like, look at that. That looks nice. I like this. And you know what the best thing about that footage is? That a lot of it looks like it was actually done practically, that they had a stuntman do it practically. They probably had a lot of, you know, takes to film this thing, but like the fact that it's probably not a true oneer. It's actually not a oneer, but you see this, like this move here. I see if I can zoom into this. There you go. He's like, you know, stretching, and then he does a bunch of this sliding. I'm sure that was on a stunt mat that they removed. Those look like fake muzzle flashes, but fine. But like this acrobatic move, I mean, that's humanly possible. That doesn't need to be animated. That definitely looks like, you know, other than the web, like it's real. So again, it looks like they're taking a very practical approach to the action, especially with how they're shooting it. The camera's not doing any moves that a real camera can't do. So it feels real, even if some of this is CGI, which these days Marvel is so good at this stuff with like how to make Spider-Man look photorealistic. They've been doing it throughout. Man, Morocco they both missed another penalty. This is insane. They suck at penalties in this game. But anyway, it does look like, you know, Marvel, they're really good with CGI body doubles. The technology has gone to a point where you can make it look photoreal and people won't know the difference. But it does genuinely look like they shot some of this stuff for real. And I'm not saying it's Tom Holland in the suit, but like that feels like it was shot for real. Like this, the imperfection of the camera move, the fact that not everything is perfectly in frame, and you know, even the action from Spider-Man, it just looks like whoever's in the suit is following the laws of physics in a way that sometimes the CGI stuff doesn't look quite there, right? So I really do appreciate this. I mean, the more we get to see the action in this movie, I know there was a whole thing about like the previous director was saying, oh, you know, maybe doing a lot of action practically doesn't end up working out for you, because they ended up, you know, basically redoing it in post anyway with CGI for the previous set of movies. But those movies, you know, 2 of the 3 happened around the pandemic years, so they ended up not being able to film on you know, on set and stuff. Whereas here, Destin Daniel Cretton, it does look like they were able to do a lot of filming on set and on location, and they were able to do a lot more practically, and they really had a focus on keeping it practical. So, and that doesn't always mean that everything they shot practically ends up in the movie. Sometimes what means is that, you know, you shoot it practically, then it gets augmented, if not entirely replaced by CGI shot double. But you know, but what you get is you get real reference of how it was done practically. And anytime animators get real reference from footage, oh my God, Netherlands just missed a 3rd penalty. So if Morocco scores, Netherlands is out. Wow. Anyway, but yeah, what I was saying is like when you end up replacing something you shot for real with CGI in post, it looks better because you use the actual footage for reference, so the action looks real because the animators are able to use that, versus when you're doing it completely, you know, with no reference whatsoever. So yeah, this Spider-Man movie could very much raise. I feel like the suit looks, by the way, Morocco just won. Damn. All right. Europe taking a beating at the World Cup today. But anyway, I keep getting distracted, but I think the suit hasn't looked this good for Spider-Man since the Andrew Garfield Amazing Spider-Man 2. I thought the suit and the action in that movie was sublime. Like, the movie may not be the greatest Spider-Man movie ever, but the Spider-Man suit, the fight sequences never looked any better. Even the Electro fight, for all the criticisms it's had over the years, I felt like was really, really good. Like, the suit looked fantastic. The action choreography was great. And it definitely feels like with Brand New Day, they're returning to that mold with better technology and, of course, a lot of lessons learned over the years and hopefully better writing. And so far from the trailers, it does look like they have a lot more positives going for the movie. But speaking of Spider-Man, we were talking about Tobey Maguire earlier. There is a rumor going around that, for Avengers Secret Wars, we will get some more Marvel Legacy characters doing cameos. So I did want to get into this. Now, here's the thing. I'm not going to spend too much time on this because it is coming from the Cosmic Circus. So take it with a big, big grain of salt. But they were saying over on the Cosmic Circus that Tobey Maguire and Andrew Garfield are reportedly the only legacy characters that are set to appear in these two Avengers movies coming up. Even though, of course, Nicolas Cage's, Ghost Rider and Ben Affleck's Daredevil, they were considered for Deadpool and Wolverine. Ultimately, never ended up working out. We remember talking about this on the show back then. It does look like, we're going to get Deadpool and Wolverine, of course, but they're not really considered legacy characters right now because, they had a movie in the MCU. So whereas Tobey and Andrew's Spider-Man are considered like legacy characters, even though they technically were in a whole MCU movie. So I don't know. We'll see. But it does look like, if you go off of this, that the new Avengers movies, well, especially when you get to Avengers Secret Wars, they're going to focus on the here and the now set of characters more, which is good. I like the idea that you're not going to go in for a shit ton of cameos from characters from the past, especially because you're getting a lot of that in Avengers Doomsday. I like the idea, like, if you're going to set up the future of the MCU, that Avengers Secret Wars, where the Avengers ultimately win the day and set up the future of the new rebooted version of this universe, that it be the characters that are going to be there in the future, not so much focused on the original 6 Avengers because it's a final send-off clip show of a movie like Endgame was. I like the idea that if they're going to introduce Marshall Ali's Blade, if they're going to give us the Midnight Suns, bring back Moon Knight, and give us a new Black Panther, and certainly showcase the current team of Avengers or Shang-Chi, those characters, the Fantastic Four, the Thunderbolts and New Avengers. Those are the characters that we're going to be living with. Any of the X-Men characters, especially like not the old Fox versions, but like the ones that are going to move forward with the MCU, such as the Sadie Sink, Jean Grey. That's what you should, showcase. The champions, like Miss Marvel and Haley Steinfeld's new Hawkeye and other characters like that. Like, those are the characters that will carry you forward. So let them be the ones who save the day ultimately. Like, you maybe have a few oldies here and there, but I like the idea. If that is indeed true, that the only legacy characters are going to be the two, previous Spider-Men, then you know what, I'm all for it. Like, let's focus on the current set of characters that are going to own the MCU for years to come. So with that, I think we're done with MCU Weekly. Yes, indeed we are. So we're going to keep the ball rolling here. I'm just going to close that out. There we go. Hang with me here for a moment. All right. Yeah. Oh, yeah. Now we got to talk about some business of the movie stuff. So let me change the graphic here. We're going to talk about some MovieTalk Madness. It's a little tangential because we will talk about Artificial later because there's, Luca Guadagnino finally talked about why he believes his movie got dropped by Amazon and his take on that. But before we get that far, I just want to bring up the big news today in the business of Hollywood. John would have loved this after, seemingly the last couple of years of us just talking about all the mergers that are happening. We have an actual company just splitting apart into two. Like, Comcast said, we're going to split into two companies. We're going to spin off NBC Universal and Sky. Sky, of course, the British production, business that they have. They also, Sky actually, gives you broadband and cable as well. So they're not just, they're not just a TV media company, but they're huge. In fact, Sky just bought ITV, which is going to completely change how, TV in the UK is going to be like. If you live in the UK, it's a big deal that Sky is buying ITV. I lived in the UK. I'd be like, holy shit, that's huge. Especially, considering in the US, we're kind of used to a lot of this stuff happening. In the UK, that's a pretty big deal. So that same Sky, which Comcast bought in 2018, you know, when Disney was getting Fox, and in order for that to go through, they had to like get rid of Sky, and Comcast went in and bought them. That's pretty big. That's pretty big company. The new NBC Universal and Sky will carry over all the parks divisions. It's going to have the movie studios, the TV studios. It's going to have Peacock, all the sports rights that are left over after the Versant spinoff. Thank you, Nelson. I appreciate it. Hello, Chimera. How are you doing, man? We appreciate you guys tuning in. Please do hit the like button while you're here. I appreciate that very much. But basically what happens with this split is, and you know what, that Anya Taylor-Joy cover, brilliant. Definitely go check that out if you guys have a chance. But before I get too distracted, Brian Roberts, who's the co-CEO of the company, basically the son of the founder of Comcast, so he still has a controlling stake in the company, announced a deal. They put out a press release. Mike Cavanaugh, who's like the co-CEO of the current company, also put out a statement. It does look like in the new company, Mike Cavanaugh is going to lead NBC Universal. He's going to be their CEO. They're bringing back the old Comcast CFO, Michael Angelakis. I think I said that right, Angelakis maybe. He is going to be the CEO of the new Comcast. So Comcast is going to take all their business, internet, broadband services, that stuff, all their wireless services. If you have like a phone plan with Comcast, that's all going to become its own company, and all the content stuff, all the the Universal Pictures, Universal theme parks, all the movie properties, all the IP, NBC, the network NBC, the Olympics rights that they have, Bravo, Telemundo, all of that, Peacock, all of that goes with NBC Universal. So that's going to be the split. And this is kind of similar to what Warner Brothers Discovery announced when they were going to split off Discovery Global and send all of that stuff, the linear stuff, one way, and they were going to keep the movie studio and the streaming service HBO Max as Warner Brothers. It's not exactly the same thing because NBC Universal did already split off all their cable networks minus Bravo and Telemundo, a couple of things like that they kept in house, but it's similar in the way that it might be for the same reasons. And just hold on to that for a moment because I'll get to that later. But as things usually happen, Comcast stock went way up today because of this news, and investors are clearly hoping that they're gonna have two companies on their hands after this split, and both of those companies are going to specialize in their particular businesses, because having that vertical integration where one part of your company does a lot of distribution, like Xfinity, if you have their cable, if you have their internet, and they'll sell you Peacock through it, they'll give you a Peacock discount. It doesn't quite work very well. We saw that with AT&T getting Warner Brothers back in the day as in 10 years ago. I think it is not less than 10 years ago. We saw how that worked out, and they split off. So we've recently seen companies try to get rid of their cable networks because it's not really ideal. It's slowly dying, that industry. So clearly Wall Street likes what's going on here. Now, the thing that I told you guys to hold on to for a moment was about why they're doing this. Because yes, you can say, oh yes, because now they can focus on being a cable company for Comcast, and NBC Universal can go back to just worrying about making movies and TV shows. Sure. But despite the fact that Brian Roberts said absolutely not, what we're doing is for a mergers and acquisitions spree, aka making ourselves more viable to either buy other companies or be bought by another company. And despite the fact that Mike Cavanaugh also said that the NBC Universal Sky as its own company is going to fit well together and they're set up for success, I think this is all being done so that one of these two companies is either going to sell itself off or is going to be positioned to buy another company. Here's the reason why. Just a little bit more context. Brian Roberts is still going to own 33% of the company's voting shares, so he's still going to have to approve any kind of future deal. The Roberts family still owns the majority. They're the single biggest shareholder in the both split up companies. He's still going to own a big chunk of it. But here's the reason why the speculation is that this here is a prelude to one of Comcast and or NBC Universal looking to do some kind of big, sale or buy down the road. And there's a really cool quote, and there's a fun quote I want to get into real quick. Let me see if I can find it. This is talking. Oh, here it is. Okay, so Wolf Research analyst Peter Supino said, I'm just going to read this out. Let me zoom into this first. There we go. He said, "We doubt that this breakup will occur. Instead, we expect one or both Comcast units to merge with peers or competitors. We believe the breakup plan is strategic to Comcast because it is a legitimately good idea that also strengthens Comcast's negotiating position with partners who will not want to wait 1 or 2 years for an otherwise completed spin out to season for tax purposes." Let me break that down for you guys. If this goes through and they do become two companies, because this is a tax-free split, the way that works is if somebody wanted to buy Comcast or merge with Comcast, or if Comcast wanted to buy another company, and and the same thing for NBC Universal, if somebody wanted to buy the new NBC Universal, or if they wanted to buy somebody else, because they would have recently gone through a big split, you would need to wait a couple of years to do any of that other activity. This was the same thing that David Zaslav had in mind and his whole team when they announced the Warner Brothers Discovery split. So, and that didn't end up happening because Paramount bought the whole thing. But there's a reason why they announced it, because that way they were saying, here's going to be Discovery Global. If you guys want just the cable networks, you can do this. We're planning on splitting it off. So if somebody can come in and be like, we'll take that package, like Netflix didn't want it, but like, we'll take that package. And the same thing was true for Warner Brothers. Netflix said, we'll take that package. We'll take the studio and streaming service. Why not? Like it's like, if you got rid of all the like the messy cable stuff, we'll take the good stuff, the IP that matters, the studio that makes all the TV shows and movies that matters, the streaming service that we can, add more subscribers to our subscriber base. That's essentially what the insiders on Wall Street think is going on here. That Comcast announced this to basically put it out there without actually saying it out loud, that everybody, NBC Universal and Sky, this new NBC Universal company, is there. We're taking away Comcast. You don't have to worry about cable. You don't have to worry about broadband. You don't have to worry about selling wireless, phone service. That's its own thing. But by the way, if you do care about that Charter who just bought Cox, you have Comcast now, and you won't have to worry about theme parks and making movies and TV shows or a streaming service that only just became profitable like a few months ago. You don't have to worry about that. You could just get, something that is basically what you already do, and then just add it and even, become a national, the cable provider in the country. And that's what's likely going on here. So it does. Now, this article here in the Hollywood Reporter does a good job of talking about what, potential outcomes could happen based on what I just talked about. So this new NBC Universal is going to include all the theme parks, which is a big part of their revenue. They're building a new one in the UK. I think they're building a new one in the Middle East. So the parks business for NBC Universal is growing significantly. Now, they talk about who could be a buyer of this new NBC Universal. And like one of you guys were saying in the chat earlier, Netflix could definitely be it. Netflix could go in and be like, we'll get the IP. Now, NBC Universal's IP is not quite Warner Brothers. They have Jurassic Park. They've got the Fast and Furious franchise. They've got some good stuff, but it's not quite Harry Potter, Lord of the Rings, DC. Right? They don't have an HBO, but they do have a lot of sports rights. They have Olympics, and they have the Premier League. They've got the NBA rights. They've got NFL rights. They do have a broadcast network. I don't know if Netflix is going to want that. They do. I don't think Netflix is going to care for Bravo or Telemundo, like basically old television networks. But they do have a lot of sports rights, and Netflix has been growing their sports portfolio recently. I'm sure you guys, there's what are the Christmas games? Like they have NFL games on Netflix now once or twice a year. So it would be interesting. And, if they wanted to go for it, but I don't know if that's very likely. Amazon also recently has been like buying up more and more things. And I'm sure they would probably love to add the Olympics, the NBA, Sunday Night Football, like Sunday Night, baseball, Sunday Night basketball on their schedule. But they're currently putting a lot of money into AI. So will Amazon spare the level of cash required to buy NBCU? That's really the question. Then you look at Disney, Paramount, and Fox. They could all do it. The biggest problem will be they're all recently have, and when I say even with Disney, it's not as recent, but it was relatively recent, like 10 years ago, let's say. Disney still has billions of dollars in debt from when they bought a bunch of Fox stuff. Fox just went in the negative. They had a bunch of cash on hand. Now they have billions of dollars of debt from buying Roku. And Paramount, of course, has going to have like $100+ billion debt bill from buying Warner Brothers. That hasn't even gone through yet. They themselves merged with Skydance like a year ago. So the problem will be with them, like, will they be able to get it across the line? Not to mention Disney already has a broadcast network in ABC, and the law currently states in the US you can't have two broadcast networks. So are you really going to be able to own ABC and NBC? You'd have to let one go. So I don't know if that one might be the big one for Disney, why that doesn't work. For Paramount, they have CBS and NBC. Fox obviously is a network too, Fox and NBC. So that would be a big hurdle for them. Although, not impossible, but if you're buying the whole thing, then that's certainly a big thing to consider. Private equity and a wild card, they're talking about here, like if a private equity like Apollo Investments or Providence Equity goes in and they say, we're going to buy it, and then we're going to squeeze it for all the juice that it's got and then sell it off. That's possible, but that's always possible these days. There's plenty of money going around. But remember, this is also, could open the door for NBC. Like we've talked about it for a while. Peacock is like the small, child in a big playground. It's a small fish in a big pond, where you got Paramount that's now adding HBO. You have Netflix, you have behemoths like Amazon and Disney Plus, which, has ESPN and Hulu stuff in there, Star internationally. Peacock is really tiny compared to those streaming services. How do you add to scale? Could you do that by, I don't know, buying Take-Two Interactive or Roblox and bring all their video game properties in and use that to your advantage? Would you want to go merge with Sony? Would you want to buy Lionsgate? Because once you get rid of the Comcast cable business, which is so different from what you do in making movies and TV shows, it makes you more likely to be able to, easily bring in a Lionsgate. Like Lionsgate just got rid of Starz a year ago, and Starz is its own thing now. So Lionsgate is purely about making movies and TV shows. It just, it gives you a simpler, more streamlined merger, or certainly your way to doing that. They could also potentially go and buy up Six Flags and like add that to their Universal Parks properties and be like, Six Flags is now like the tier B to the tier A of Universal theme parks. You could do that too. And then I mentioned earlier for the new Comcast, there's fewer options of who could buy them. But I mean, they mentioned SpaceX here, which I don't think is going to be the case. The only reason it would make sense is because Comcast owns a lot of wireless spectrum, which is basically certain wireless frequencies that each company, in the space, like Verizon, AT&T, T-Mobile, they all own a certain part of the wireless spectrum. And that's how their wireless services work, so they don't clash with other companies' wireless spectrum. SpaceX, for their Starlink service, if they want to expand it in a more grounded, more meaningful way, in a wireless service way, they could do that. But it would be small potatoes for them. They got money, from the recent IPO. But is that really going to be what they want to do? Probably not. Charter, I mentioned, is the most likely one. If Charter merges with Comcast, the big problem is going to be any kind of cable company mergers have to be approved at the state-by-state level, which is a lot more complicated than at the federal level. So if you're going to try to get through 50 states, especially the blue states are more merger, that's going to be a problem. But AT&T, T-Mobile, Verizon could want to do this. Again, private equities in here. And of course, like I mentioned before, Brian Roberts is still going to have to sign off on anything because he will still end up owning pretty much 1/3 of the whole company. Comcast founder Ralph Roberts, his father, passed it on to him. He still owns 33% of the company. So yeah, I don't know if Apple feels like the next logic. I don't think Apple's going to come in because NBC Universal still has a lot of stuff that Apple probably doesn't want. Same as thing for Netflix, but it's always possible if you want to piecemeal things out, because I don't think Apple or Netflix are going to want to get into a broadcast network like NBC. So yeah, but hey, Comcast is splitting into two, but are they really, and why? Hopefully, it was a nice explainer here, but you guys let me know in the comments. And of course, if you have any questions, get in the comments down below. Or if you have any ideas for why they might be doing this and what the long game is from Comcast, let me know in the comments. But we're not done yet with Movie Talk Madness. Let's actually talk about a movie specifically. We mentioned this many times on the show recently, so I just wanted to bring this up again. Because Luca Guadagnino, the director of the movie, has finally made some comments. Although he didn't talk about it directly because he really can't do it directly. It's an ongoing thing. He obviously still wants this movie to get released, but you guys might remember it wasn't too long ago that we found out that the Sam Altman-focused AI movie called Artificial that Luca Guadagnino had worked on. I think Andrew Garfield was in the movie as one of the leads, maybe even playing Sam Altman. I forget if he's the one playing him. The movie was basically shot. It's pretty much done. But then Amazon MGM, who were making the movie, they're the ones financing it. They basically dropped the film right as it was all about ready to go. And the reasoning was because Amazon's obviously getting in the AI game in a big way, especially, in business with OpenAI. So it creates a situation where obviously Amazon didn't think it was in their best interest to make a movie that, probably doesn't paint Sam Altman in the best of light. So, of course, Luca Guadagnino now has talked about this. And again, I'll go through his comments, but he's not really able to talk about it too freely because he's still got a movie on the line here. So what he said was, I can't say much because we are right in the middle of this situation, but these are industrial policies that are certainly not new. I mean, this is the kind of movie that I think Luca Guadagnino is known for. Like he's known for these kind of like thought-provoking, really, topics that are very, topical, but also create a lot of debate. So I'm not surprised that he was working on this. But the other thing that he mentioned later on, not again speaking directly to the Amazon MGM situation about the movie, but he did talk about, in general, what's going on with the AI, in Hollywood today. He said, to me, the issue isn't artificial intelligence itself. What matters most to me are the people. It is completely changing the face, not just of society in terms of consumption and how we relate to these tools, but the very face of the identity of a place like the United States and the entire world. With the rise of this small oligarchy that wields truly radical control, which, hello Eric in the chat, you are completely right about that. Luca is on the money here. He's on the money here. CAA Media Finance, which represents Luca Guadagnino, has been screening the movie right now to potential buyers. But of course, many of what you expect to be interested in the film, like Netflix Focus Features, Warner Brothers new Clockwork label, as well as A24, all these prestige like studios who try to get these movies that are awards contenders, they have all passed on the movie already. We know that Mubi at this point, which did release Queer with Guadagnino a year ago and was a big one a big hit at Cannes, they are potentially the most likely buyer, but even that's not confirmed right now. So we'll see how this all works out. But I just feel bad for Luca Guadagnino. Like a movie, again, it's almost ready to go. Like it's basically done, and now he's trying to figure out who's going to put it out in the world for him, and otherwise it's going to be in limbo forever. So, yeah. Hi Hunter Iggy, the Supergirl movie and the actress is forced and fabricated. I don't know what you mean by that, Hunter Iggy. If you want to restate that, I feel like that's missing some context of what you just said, but welcome to the chat. Yeah, I mean, look, Mubi might be the ones with the balls to pick up the movie, Eric, because it just looks like pretty much every other big, prestige studio has passed on this. I don't know if Searchlight or maybe Studio Canal might be into it, maybe. Although Studio Canal is trying to do more bigger blockbusters, so I don't know if they would be interested in it. Bleecker Street probably not big enough to go after it, but yeah. I don't know about Neon. I think we talked about the other day, maybe. I'm not sure if Neon is interested, so we'll see. But Mubi being interested is, there's at least one potential buyer out there, and you just need one to say yes. So yeah, but that's where it's at. I mean, Luca Guadagnino is fighting the good fight, and I think what he said about artificial intelligence is right on the money. It's just right now, it's not in a good place in terms of how much power these AI companies wield, and clearly they're getting more and more influence over Hollywood, and what that means for the movies so far doesn't look all that good. So we'll have to see how it all turns out in the end, but. Yeah, already paid for and shelved. I want people outraged like the whole Wile E. Coyote guy. Yeah, Eric, but unfortunately, it's Wile E. Coyote is easier to grab hold onto because it's Looney Tunes, whereas this, of course, a lot of people don't even know the movie exists. And with Amazon MGM dropping it, it's yeah, I can understand why there's not as many people who are out there talking about this, but obviously we are. So we are here to drum up the interest in this topic, and we'll keep bringing you guys any updates as we get them. So hopefully movie will buy them, or hopefully movie will pick up the film for theatrical distribution. That would be really good. Searchlight is Disney that did 100 million yeah, you're right. Okay, yeah, because Searchlight would not do it either because Disney just paid although that deal is no longer valid with Sora because Sora is dead, so who knows where that's at. Hunter Eggy saying the Supergirl movie and the actress is forced and fabricated hate. Yeah, well, Enterprising was talking about that earlier. So we will get into that again later. Again, what I'll be talking about with how the movie did not do well is going to be more focused on more objective numbers, like what's happening at the box office, other things like that. I'm not really getting into the hyperbole about why people are not liking it's not a perfect film. We've talked about that, and I think that has more to do with why it's not doing well, because the bar right now for movies is really high in terms of a superhero film. It needs to truly stand out, and I think we talked about it. Liz and I will go through it again tomorrow in a full spoilery way, so you guys bring all your spoiler chat for Supergirl. I think a lot of what's going on with Supergirl at the box office, part of it is not Supergirl's fault in terms of the movie itself. Part of it is because the movie is not as good as maybe some people should have wanted it to be, but it's also ultimately, it just feels like maybe it was too early in some ways for them to put Supergirl out in the world. Maybe they should have gone with more well-known characters, and I know we've talked about that too, so I'll pick up on that later. Eric saying, why couldn't we have gone to cool tech future like The Fifth Element? I know, well, unfortunately we live in the very dark capitalistic world. Hello Deco, thank you for joining in. Yeah, Brave New World happening before our eyes indeed. You know what's also brave? The animated movies topic that you guys voted for Mount Rushmore Monday. That's a great transition. Okay, so Mount Rushmore Monday. This is the part of the show where we get into all the fun Mount Rushmores that you guys sent over. 6 of you sent us your Mount Rushmore picks. Of course, the poll it featured, I think it was it was time travel movies. We had animated movies in there. I believe we also had clown films in there. And then in addition to that, we had football goats. Like soccer if you're in America. So it'd be like Messi, Ronaldo, stuff like that. And you guys wanted to do a Mount Rushmore of animated films. So here we are. We're going to do our Mount Rushmore of animated movies. So without further ado, let's get into it, shall we? We'll get into the quickets later. But Mount Rushmore of animated movies does look like it's going to be a fun one, because not only do I have picks from you guys, 6 of you, hopefully you guys are in the chat, so do tell me why you picked the ones you did. But we also have Liz and John's picks, and then I have my picks, so we'll get through this. So let's dive into Mount Rushmore of animated movies, shall we? Marco, I don't know if you're watching. Enterprising, just go in by the way, if you guys want to send us your picks, it's always in the community post section. Monday morning, I put up the winning topic and I asked you guys for your picks. You send them to me in the comment on that post, and then we'll have it on the show like Marco did. Marco was the first one to do that. Figuredron giving his take on Supergirl, saying Millie is being unfairly treated. Of course, the usual suspects are being jerks, but the fact remains B- movie score, horrid placement for release date. Those are all good points, and we'll cover those later too, but I agree with you on that, Figure Drawing. Yeah, but Movie Spud, we also have your picks, so we're going to get to those later too. But okay, so speaking of picks, we're starting with Marco's picks. So these are Marco's 4 movies on his Mount Rushmore of animated films. So he gave us The Lion King, the 1994 Lion King, one of the greatest animated movies of all time. I literally watched back the opening of the movie and cried earlier today. It just hit me on a guttural level, like in a way that I didn't think it would. It's just like, oh, holy shit, my childhood is coming back to me. So yeah, and then I went on a rabbit hole and watched the opening of Up, and then even the ending of Up is brilliant. The whole movie Up is fantastic, which is also on the list here. So thank you, Marco. I think you got 2 bangers right there. Then you have The Land Before Time, which is in a couple of Mount Rushmores today. That's another good pick. I don't consider it as one of my favorites, but I think it's also because it's well before my time and I never quite got into it growing up, even though I love dinosaurs, as most kids do. But The Land Before Time, it's iconic. I think for a lot of people, they consider it one of their best animated, one of their favorite animated movies of all time. So it is a seminal animated film in that respect. These are great picks. I need to get a Toy Story 3 in there. Like, I just watched some scenes for Toy Story 3 in preparation for tonight's show, and I forget who voices the purple bear character, but holy cow, I'm like, that was one of the legit most hateable and characters a franchise has. I think that's one of the best villains that Pixar has ever written. Is like, I want to like rip up that teddy fucking bear. Like, yeah. Don't you worry for your drawing, somebody did put Spirited Away in their list, so we will definitely get into it. But Marco, that's a great Mount Rushmore. You got The Lion King, Toy Story 3, The Land Before Time, and of course Pixar's Up. Fantastic movies. Then, of course, Monique, I hope you're still in the chat because we have your Mount Rushmore here. I'm sure you guys recognize all of these titles, but if you don't, I'll go through them. You got Ratatouille there, which for a lot of people is one of their favorites, if not the best Pixar movie they've ever seen. I am not one of those people, but I can respect the hustle, so I will give you that. So I think Ratatouille still is iconic for a lot of folks. It's certainly one of the better Pixar movies that's ever been made, and it's right there. And you know what? With Monique's love for making good food and just, being a fantastic chef in the kitchen, I am not surprised that Ratatouille is on her list. And then, of course, next to that, you've got The Prince of Egypt, which I believe is the one that they tried to do a live-action remake with Jake Gyllenhaal, which didn't really work out really well, but the animated movie is pretty good. Again, not one of my favorites, Monique, but I really appreciate that you have it here. That's a pretty good list right there. And then, of course, you got The Hobbit. Not the Peter Jackson one, but I believe this is from the 1973 animated Hobbit, which the artwork I recognize. I mean, it's become memes the world over. That's also another iconic ones. Predates my movie, into my movie journey, but it's a great film. Dude, animated movies, there's so many. I told Liz and John, I'm like, I picked my Mount Rushmore and I was sad that I had to leave 10 different movies off the list, and that's not even remembering all the ones that I probably would have put on the list. We could do a whole tier list Tuesday on it. I think it would be fantastic. Even if you picked out like 25, people would be like, you left another 25 all-time greats off the list. Just Pixar alone has probably like 10 of the greatest animated movies of all time. It's wild. Not to mention Disney, especially the classics and some of the modern classics, and DreamWorks animation. Like, I even think the original Despicable Me movie should be up there. But the last one on Monique's list is, of course, Akira, which, as far as anime goes, is the first time we're seeing one on the list today. And yeah, that is one hell of a Mount Rushmore. That anime is so seminal. Like, they've had homages to it in movies, and the iconography of Akira, that poster alone, it's like, immediately what you're talking about. Immediately. So great Mount Rushmore from Monique. Now we move on to Movie Spud. I know you're in the chat right now, man, so you got to tell me why you picked the ones you did, because Movie Spud's got The Lion King once again. Actually, you don't have to tell me. I already know why you picked The Lion King, because it's one of Disney's. It's not only is one of their modern classics in terms of like the more recent era of Disney, not the classic Walt Disney era when he was still around, but it's still one of the greatest animated movies. One of the movies. It's not just ones that's loved by humans, but it's loved by cats all over the world. Like, your cat is gonna love The Lion King. If you haven't seen The Lion King with your cat around you, please do. And it's a brilliant movie. There's a reason why The Lion King, the live action remake, was like the highest grossing animated movie for a long time, and they made Mufasa, and that still did really, really well. And of course, I have a feeling they're going to be doing a few more of them down the road. So yeah, I mean, Akira is an anime classic, and it's not the last one we're going to see today. Then of course we got The Incredibles, one of the greatest superhero movies, but also one of the greatest animated movies of all time. I don't know if I forget if I put it in my list as well, because it's so hard. I'm like, there's so many good Pixar movies to put on the list, but The Incredibles, like from Brad Bird, is still one of the most perfect movies. It's not even like it's a great animated movie. It's just a great movie, period. Like it should have been, a potential winner for the Oscar that it came, the year that it came out. Great movie. And then of course you got Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs. That is of course the very first animated feature movie ever made, going all the way back to, you're closer to World War II back then than you are to the Korean and Vietnam Wars. That's how old the original Snow White was. That's the first Disney movie that they ever made, the first feature that Disney ever produced. So Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs, fantastic. That's an essential, like, you want to learn the history of animation as far as movies are concerned, you will watch, you will learn about, and you should know about Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs. And then of course Movie Spud saying Spider-Verse is top tier, Spider-Man and the animation is jaw-droppingly cool. And I 100% agree with you. I think especially Across the Spider-Verse kind of takes it to a whole nother level, which is what you put here on your list. And like there's been a few, if you're talking about the most important animated movies of all time, you've got Snow White there, the first animated feature ever. Then you have Spider-Man, you have the Across the Spider-Verse, but just Spider-Verse movies in general. The first one especially, it changed the game for feature-length animation in the same way that Pixar's Toy Story did, the first one in 1995. And then as far as like, animation, even like 2D animation movies, The Lion King was that too, and The Incredibles. The Incredibles, like John likes to say, is the best Fantastic Four movie ever made, It's to this day, is one of the best superhero anythings you'll see. So these are 4 fantastic picks. Yeah, I mean, Movie Spud, don't you worry. I mean, plenty of other people on this list on today's Mount Rushmore Monday, they did pick Toy Story. So we're gonna talk about Toy Story nonetheless. Yeah, and Snow White is the Disney movie that started everything for animated movies. I mean, Walt Disney still holds a record for the most Oscars won by a single person because of these animated movies, not the least of which was Snow White, of course. It was nominated. I think I don't know if they had an animation feature at the time, but definitely was, I believe it was nominated at the time. Yeah, I mean, The Lion King was definitely the renaissance of Disney's animation, like in the 90s. It was like the animated renaissance of Disney. It was just a new era, and you could tell like it was a good mix of 2D and 3D animation, but the animation style, the art style was very much like, still kind of in line with your classic Disney movies, and just the storytelling was top notch. I still remember to this day watching the documentaries behind the scenes of them like bringing in actual animals for animators to kind of get reference for like how they move and walk around and interact with each other, like not necessarily in a jungle, but like they saw a lot of nature documentaries, and you build a lot of those elements into the movie. Yeah, The Lady and the Tramp is your personal favorite Disney. Okay, nice. That actually, not a lot of people would say that, so that's really good. The Lady and the Tramp, awesome. Well, now we move on to Caleb's Mount Rushmore. Caleb's not usually in the chat these days, but he did leave us in Mount Rushmore, and Caleb's got one of the more unconventional, let's say, Mount Rushmores. So he gave us 4 movies. You got The End of Evangelion, which I believe is more of an adult animation movie, not like it's XXX, but like more adult animation, less so like kids themes. Then you got The Iron Giant. I'm sure John would love to see that there. One of the great underrated animated movies. Then you got Paranorman, fantastic, super. It's just amazing. Again, you got a different kind of animation there, not your traditional hand-drawn animation or cell animation. Then Caleb also gave us what must be his favorite DC animated movie, which is Superman versus the Elite. I feel like that's another good pick. Again, I wouldn't put it in my Mount Rushmore, but I'm sure Caleb, appreciates it a lot more than we do. Yeah, you know what, Enterprising, you're not wrong. I feel like before the Spider-Verse movies, The Incredibles were the best animated superhero movie ever made. Certainly, theatrically. And you know what, overall, it's not just theatrically. But with that, M2G, I know you're still in the chat. I don't know if you stepped out or not, but let us know what you think of why you put your picks on your Mount Rushmore here. We'll go through them in a second. Figure Drawing saying, just as I put Clint Eastwood on my Mount Rushmore, I do the same thing with Miyazaki, as he needs to have some sort of representation. Well, don't you worry, Figure Drawing. Miyazaki's represented in these Mount Rushmores. We're getting there. Yeah, Caleb had very good niche choices, which again, it goes to explain a lot about, why Caleb likes the things that he usually likes when you talk about DC stuff. He's got a very specific taste, so I appreciate him sticking to that. Yeah, Spirited Away for a lot of people is the best animated movie of all time. And again, I personally, like, I objectively I can see it. For me personally, I didn't put it in my Mount Rushmore, but I believe John did. So we'll get into that later. Don't you, I'm just giving it away now. But let's talk about MTG's picks. He also has The Incredibles in there, and now we see for the first time the original Toy Story, the 1995 Toy Story in there. Then of course you have Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse, and once again, I believe for the third time tonight, The Lion King. Now I know why you guys voted for this topic in the poll, because I chose The Lion King as the photo in the poll. So that totally makes sense why it won. But yeah, this is a pretty consistent list. I mean, you got 2 Pixar movies in there. You got Spider-Verse. You got The Lion King. Again, Spider-Verse and Toy Story completely changed the game for how animation was done. The first Toy Story was the first computer-generated 3D animated movie ever made. Spider-Verse completely changed what it was like to make it, animated movies. It broke the Pixar mold that everybody had been following for decades, and so I think is well deserving for being in this list. Then you got, of course, The Lion King. I've said so much about it already, and of course The Incredibles as well, making it onto yet another list here. Figured Drawing saying Kubo and the Two Strings wouldn't be on my Mount Rushmore, but at least honorable mention. I know, right? This is the thing about Mount Rushmore. It's kind of like Tier List Tuesday on steroids, in the sense that you really gotta narrow that stuff down. Like with Tier List Tuesday, we usually do, like, I don't know, top 10, top 15, top 20, 25. But like when you're doing your Mount Rushmore, you got 4 picks. So you gotta be careful how you put those 4 picks together, right? So like I told you guys, I left like 10, 12 movies off my list because I'm like, there's only room for 4. So I have to make a very narrow assessment of who really do I keep and who gets left off the list. But if you do a Tier List Tuesday topic, I think, if you do Miyazaki one, that would be fantastic. A lot of people would love to. We'll put it on on a poll for the next Tier List Tuesday. Not tomorrow's, because we already pretty much know the topic for tomorrow. You guys are going to be talking about GTA tomorrow on Tier List Tuesday, but maybe for the next one. So now we move on to Meme YouTube's Mount Rushmore. This is probably the most niche list that you will see tonight. A lot of adult animation on this. I don't know if we have had Meme YouTube in the chat before, but clearly they came across the post and they added their picks in there. So Meme YouTube gave us Aqua Teen Hunger Force, movie film for theaters. Oh, okay, I see what Aqua Teen Hunger Force movie film for theaters. At first I was like, wait, wasn't that a TV show? But apparently they did make a movie, so there you go. Then they put in Heavy Metal, which again, adult animation. I tried to find the most non NSFW version of the poster for this. Then Rock and Rule, another one, a lot of adult animation here. And then Wizards, of course. So Meme YouTube picking again some very, very specific picks that definitely wouldn't be what I would pick. But hey, you know what, Meme YouTube, we appreciate that you're keeping us on our toes. And Monique, we loved your picks, by the way. And of course, we have a few more to go here. Now, I think we're past the ones that you guys sent in. This is a badass list, Figure Drawing. Meme YouTube obviously has good taste in animation. I'm actually really intrigued. I kind of want to watch all these movies. I didn't know most of them existed before. So, but with that, we get on to John's Mount Rushmore. Of course, John, who's taking a bit of a break from all the news today and this for the better part of this week. But John's Mount Rushmore is also pretty dope. He actually sent me some notes because he was like, there's a reason why I picked each one of these, and you better tell the folks why. So he picked Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs, which we have seen once before on tonight's segment. So he said it was the first major 2D animated movie, 2D animated feature film. So it's essential viewing. If you want to learn all about your animation, then you can't not talk about Snow White. So that definitely is the reason why he put it on there. It's also fantastic. It's a great movie. It's so good. And considering that was the first feature, like decades ago, now it's almost 100 years ago, or it's going to be getting closer to 100 years ago. Like it really goes to show you how far we have come in the world of animated films. And even, just from the beginning, we were already off to a great start. Speaking of essentials, Toy Story again, now for the second time seeing it tonight. John said it was the first major 3D animated feature film. Again, similar to Snow White Dwarfs being the first 2D animated feature film, Toy Story was the first 3D animated feature film. Then he put in Coraline. Coraline he put in there because while it's not the first stop motion film, it is one of the greats and fun fact, if you guys didn't know about this, it is the first to be shot in stereoscopic 3D, which blew my mind. I was like, wait, they shot an animated movie in stereoscopic 3D? That's a lot. That's a lot of work. If you know how stereoscopic 3D is shot, I mean, you're shooting with multiple cameras so that you can do 3D in post without doing like a fake post, stereoscopic conversion as they do with most movies where you only shoot with one camera. But stereoscopic 3D, you're shooting with at least 2 cameras. And so for stop motion, where you're going 1 frame at a time, that is an amazing amount of work for Coraline. Enterprising saying my list would be Snow White, The Land Before Time, Beauty and the Beast. That's one I was surprised nobody included, but I was like, damn, that's another one. It's hard to leave off the list. And then Toy Story and Princess Mononoke. That's more than 4, so you'd have to drop one. So, but that's still a great top 5. Pokemon, the first movie, was good. Yeah, I agree with you there, Nelson. Shout out to John for laying the smack down. Great skill, great list. Monumental. Yes, indeed, figure drawing. They are great picks. Movie Spud. John always cooks. John knows what he's talking about with movies. And yeah, big dub for John for finally including Spirited Away. Absolutely. Speaking of, this is what John said about Spirited Away. I mean, again, kind of echoing what we've been talking about. Many consider it the greatest animated film ever made, which is something that also John believes. So he thinks it's also the greatest animated movie ever made, and that's why Spirited Away is part of his Mount Rushmore. That's an amazing list. That's an amazing list. Coraline. I mean, again, you're looking at 4 movies here, which if you wanted to give somebody like if you want to know about animation, these are the 4, like the best animation movies of all time, or the most consequential animation movies of all time. If you can only give them 4, these would be the 4 you would give them. I personally would probably swap out Coraline for Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse because of like where Hollywood animation is today because of that film. But I mean, again, Coraline, stereoscopic 3D, stop motion, wild. It's just, I don't think any people appreciate the level of effort that goes into making a movie like that at the feature length level. But that brings us to Liz's Mount Rushmore, another eclectic set of picks, which are very different from what we have seen so far. So she included the animated Robin Hood from, I believe this is from the 70s. Somebody might tell me any different, but this is definitely like the older, animated Robin Hood. We have seen a lot of live action Robin Hood since, but this, of course, if you recognize the artwork, you recognize the characters. It was done in animation decades ago, and for a lot of people, that's all you needed. It was fantastic. You don't need to do it again. And clearly Liz is somebody who believes that too. And then of course you have Snow White. Actually not Snow White, Sleeping Beauty. Sorry, we already talked about Snow White. You got Sleeping Beauty. The first time we see Sleeping Beauty on the list, to me, again, it's probably when you look at like the classic Disney animation, Sleeping Beauty, Beauty and the Beast, Cinderella, counting them wrong. I already mentioned Snow White. Yeah. Bambi, Dumbo. Like these are like, if you were to do like a 6 or 10 like greatest traditionally like 2D animated movies of all time, Sleeping Beauty is on there. It's obviously like also adapting all those classic fables. Figure drawing saying, Dear Dan, Harryhausen representation could arguably be on a film connoisseur's list. He was unrivaled, boundless drive and talent, DIY to the core. Yeah, I mean, dude, Harryhausen's stuff was amazing. And again, it's hard, like animation movies. It's a big topic, and you really got to pick the ones that, appeal. Like, because not everybody's using the same criteria. Like John obviously loves the movies that he picked, but also he's picking movies that I think are very consequential to feature-length animation. So, and some people are obviously picking the movies that they just really love. So it just depends on how you pick your movies. But Liz, I think, also has a great list here. She's got Wall-E in there. God, again, one of the greatest, most underrated Pixar movies of all time. And as far as like the art of telling a story without a ton of dialogue, because the majority of the movie has no dialogue, other than maybe a few words here and there, it's just wonderful. It's wonderful. I always appreciate a movie that can, tell a compelling narrative without leaning heavy into the dialogue of it all. The whole show not tell approach. And Wall-E is not only one of the greatest animated characters of all time, that's one of the most heartwarming movies. It does make you cry, It's like Up does it like right off the bat, but you watch Wall-E and you're like, God, like I love humans. Like these are the robots we want in the world, not this dumbass AI. I want more Wall-E. Like that's what I want. You know, like why can't robot, you know, like it makes you wonder, like, you know, are we going down the wrong path here? Like, are we in the worst timeline? Um, yeah. Monique's saying you got me with the Snow White fight right in the feels. Yeah, yeah. I mean, Wall-E is an amazing pick. Wall-E is one of the best Pixar movies, one of the best animated movies of all time. And then, of course, I think the probably the most recent movie in any of these lists, you have The Wild Robot. And The Wild Robot is a great movie. It's a great movie. I can tell you that because I've tried to watch it twice. I fell asleep both times, and it's not because of the movie. I was just really exhausted. But, you know, I ended up like kind of on one time I fell asleep late in the movie. The other time I fell asleep early and then watched the back half of it. So I've like pieced it together in my mind. But you know, there's a lot in common that The Wild Robot has with Wall-E in terms of like, again, you're in animation, you're able to create this sense of empathy on screen, and you do it in a way where, again, there's a lot of language barriers here between the characters, and you're able to, you know, this character doesn't have a mouth necessarily, he has a voice and stuff, but it's just, yeah. And that's not a Pixar movie, right? I think that was DreamWorks made The Wild Robot, or I think it was DreamWorks Animation. It's just, it goes to show you Pixar and Disney aren't the only ones who do this stuff really well. And The Wild Robot is a modern day classic. So I really appreciate that. I think Liz got a great list here. So let's keep going. Now we have my picks. The main event, of course. I'm biased, of course, to my picks, but after going through everybody else's picks, I was like, what do I do? Like, you know, I've seen it all, you know, done it all, been there, done that. How do I build on it? So I was like, look, I'm going to do my 4, like if I had to take 4 animated movies onto, you know, an island and get cast away with a bunch of coconuts and nothing else. And maybe I had like, I don't know, a poor old DVD player that had enough charge for me to watch 4 movies. What 4 animated movies would I take with me? And even then, it was incredibly difficult because like I said, I feel like I left at least 10 great ones off the list. I don't know, like I wanted to include Finding Nemo. I wanted to include all the, well, you know, the Toy Story movies, certainly, you know, 1 and 3, especially 2. God, it's just so many good ones. I wanted to include Up. Like, holy shit, like Up is such a fantastic, in a lot of ways, people love it for the opening sequence, but I'm like, that whole movie, the older you get, the more you appreciate Up. Both of the Spider-Verse movies, and I'm probably sure about the third one that's coming up as well, will become an instant classic. A lot of Disney animation from the 90s I wanted to include as well, and I even wanted to kind of include Frozen because like it's again the commercial success, but and the first Shrek movie, you know, it's hard. You got to pick one. I was like, you know, you got to have Shrek representation, but it's also like, I'm surprised nobody else picked a Shrek movie, you know? It's like, how are people forget about how fucking amazing Shrek movies were? The Final Fantasy movies, Fiona mentioned a bunch of those. Fantasia is, nobody mentioned that. I think that's another, like, a bit of a blind spot for people these days. But like, I felt like I left off a ton of amazing classics, especially a lot of Pixar movies and classic Disney ones too. Like Beauty and the Beast, I thought everybody left off the list that should have been on there. But what I did end up leaving on there is what I believe is the single greatest animated movie of all time, and that is The Lion King. And the box office numbers bear that out between the original and then the 2 live action ones that they've done, quote unquote live action, CGI ones. The Jungle Book, God, I forget, there's so many ones. But to me, The Lion King is the seminal animated movie. And the fact that it made me fucking cry over just the first 5 minutes of the movie when I put it on. And it wasn't just like oh my God, I suck up. Like, it was like the best kind of nostalgia I have felt in a long time. And I was watching the opening sequence on my iPhone. I was like, I'm not even putting it on my home theater system. Like, damn. To me, I mean, Aladdin is also another good one. Like, I love the original Aladdin, or how I would say it, Aladdin. But like, anyway, then The Incredibles. I can't not include The Incredibles because, like, it was, for me, it was really close between that and Finding Nemo. Even Finding Dory is fantastic. Like, I don't think people give Finding Dory enough credit. That movie, damn, that movie fucking breaks your hearts in the third act. If you haven't seen Finding Dory in a while, Like, it sets it up early and it then breaks you emotionally, man. Pixar is too damn good. Chicken Run, I mean, Chicken Little, I wanted to kind of, maybe it would have been an honorable mention at best. But The Incredibles, again, one of the greatest superhero movies of all time, one of the most perfectly paced movies of all time. It has some of the most iconic scenes of all time, like to the point where Marvel actually had like a callback to it in like Avengers Infinity War. Like, where is my super suit? Like, it's just, I will never forget those moments. I remember growing up, The Incredibles, like, it was like I used to not live in the US, but every time I would come visit family, I was like, every summer we're like, let's put on The Incredibles, and it was like a tradition. So I would always remember it as like one of my, essentials. A Bug's Life, yeah, The Bug's Life, absolute, again, so many that we have. Even the Cloudy with a Chance of Meatballs movies, like, are especially the first one is fantastic. Then for my third Mount Rushmore movie, I put in Shrek 2, and I gotta say, Shrek 2 is one of the best animation parodies that also works as a fantastic movie unto itself, where it takes the fable characters and reinvents them and does parody a lot of the other stuff that you're used to seeing in those Disney movies over the years, Pixar. And you up the quality animation. The whole third act of I Need a Hero, and that whole sequence is, oh my god, the fairy godmother. You guys do not remember how much of a freaking phenomenon and how amazing those Shrek movies were back in the day. Shrek 2 is so good. Like, again, to me, they're just like personal cornerstones of animation of all time. So many great ones. And of course, I cannot, not include Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse, because like I was talking about, the way Toy Story changed how Hollywood thought about animation, with like, you can do 3D animation. Then people got Shrek, and then we got Shrek 2, we got Toy Story 2, Toy Story 3, and pretty much every other Pixar movie after the Toy Story, because, it was their first film. That's what Into the Spider-Verse, Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse did. It changed how Hollywood thinks about feature film animation. And every movie since, including Pixar movies, have tried to replicate not necessarily just all the looks of and all the animation styles of the showcase, the millions of different ones of the showcase, playing with frame rates, hand-drawn animation combined with 3D, with 2D, with other like cell animation and stuff like that. It also just completely changed how studios approach renderings and like just how they render characters and the render engines that they use, or like the textures. Now, whether you watch a DreamWorks animation movie, whether you watch an Illumination movie, even if there's franchises in Pixar and other studios that have existed pre Into the Spider-Verse, today they use some tone of how, animated movies are meant to look, because what a good animated movie looks like today is very much defined by Into the Spider-Verse, just as much as every 3D animated movie was very much defined by the look of Toy Story since 1995. So in that level, I feel like Into the Spider-Verse is very much, a seminal movie. Watership Down is another one. Heavy Metal is a classic. Paranorman, Jungle Book, yeah, great picks. Oh, The Hunchback of Notre Dame. Hello, Filmology. I missed part of the show. Did you guys have any DC animated movies on your Mount Rushmore? I think Caleb did. He did Superman versus the Elite, Filmology. So that was the only one. Mask of the Phantasm is a great one, and nobody has pointed out so far. But yeah, that's another fantastic one. 101 Dalmatians. Oh my God. Just my childhood is coming right back right now. So A Night Before Christmas should be an all-time list. Henry Selick is a genius. Tim Burton is basically part of the movie in name only, as he didn't make it. Yeah, figure drawing. You guys, if you want to send us your, Mount Rushmore, either send them in the comments or get in the comments down below. If you're watching after we're live, I feel like, we got some picks last week. I think Enterprising gave some of his earlier. Beowulf is another good one. Coraline is also a great movie. Fire and Ice, yeah. So yeah, I mean, that's my Mount Rushmore: The Lion King, The Incredibles, Shrek 2, and Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse. Yeah, I think I did a good job there, despite leaving like 50 amazing movies off the list. Olivia saying, hello, Olivia. People who keep on hating Superman, calling it bad, should see the 2015 Fantastic Four movie first. Well, yeah, but I mean, you can do that, and you can point to any other bad movie. Like, it's, we're going to go into it much deeper than that. Don't you worry. We're getting to that really, really soon. Filmology is saying Sleeping Beauty and Alice in Wonderland are one of my favorites, not going to lie. Yeah, I mean, Alice in Wonderland, another one. Like, it's, Damn, there's so many of them. Sleeping Beauty we did have on Liz's list, I think. So there was that. Um, Snow White was the first movie my grandmother saw in theater. Wow, yeah. I mean, that's how long ago the original Snow White came out. It was the first Disney animated feature film. And then, we've talked about Toy Story being the first animated 3D film. And we've talked about, of course, you have Spider-Verse changing the game again. So it's, yeah, fantastic stuff. Anyway, we had 9 Mount Rushmores today. That's a lot of Mount Rushmores. So let us know what you thought about those picks. Obviously, if you want your own picks, drop them in the chat or drop them in the comments down below. Hello, Jalen, showing up just in time. We're about to get the quick hits. Do a Scooby-Doo's Mount Rushmore. Well, I don't know if Scooby-Doo Mount Rushmore is going to be like, is there enough? I don't know if there's enough Scooby-Doo movies to do a Mount Rushmore onto itself. Like, there's like 4 Scooby-Doo movies in total anyway. Like, I don't know, like, you guys tell me, am I wrong about that? So maybe you could do a tier list Tuesday for Scooby-Doo movies. That's probably more relevant. They are doing a new Lego movie too, and dude, the first Lego movie was fantastic, and the Batman Lego movie was also amazing. Yeah, just me today. John is taking a bit of a break. I think he was getting a little burnt out, so I think it's a good time for him to take a few days off. But he'll be back soon enough. Don't you worry. The Last Unicorn's another one. Caroline we mentioned a few times. Has Scooby-Doo got 40 movies? Do that? Like, I don't know. Are there like TV movies? I feel like Scooby-Doo has mostly been like a lot of TV shows. I didn't think there were 40 Scooby, unless you're talking mostly like direct to DVD movies, like, or like today they would just go on streaming. I didn't know there were that many Scooby movies. I mean, if they're TV, yeah, if there were TV movies, that's probably what Olivia is referring to. It's just a little difficult because I don't know how many people would have seen all of them, you know what I mean? Like, we try to make topics that a lot of people can participate in, so doing anything that's so niche that not everybody can get involved, I think it's the key. You try to balance it out, but we'll put it on the poll and see if you guys pick the topic ultimately. Like, we have 4 topics. Usually you guys suggest the ideas, they go on a poll, and you guys pick the one that ultimately ends up winning. So Figuring saying yesterday or the day before, you said the way to make money with movies is to make 4-quadrant animated movies. The list illustrates that point. Countless bangers. Yeah, exactly. Today more than ever, a 4-quadrant animated movie is as safe of a bet as any genre. Basically, is as safe of a bet as the superhero genre was like 10-15 years ago. There's no genre. Now, you still need to make a good movie. Like, there's still some, like, there's gonna be some bad animated movies that will come out, because you got to remember, like, the franchise stuff still applies. Like, if it's a sequel, spin-off, prequel, whatever, it's gonna have a built-in audience. Mufasa did relatively well, because it was like a prequel to The Lion King. You also, of course, have a Minions movie coming out. This is like the 7th movie in the franchise, the Despicable Me Minions franchise. Toy Story 5, obviously the 5th movie in that franchise. But yeah, those are safe bets today. Very much safe bets. Yeah, that Scoob movie was pretty okay last year. Okay, well, yeah, Olivia. So we'll put it on a tier list poll and see how well it does. We don't usually just pick a topic. You guys vote for it, and then you do that one. I think Monique might be watching a little bit behind, so that's why she's getting to some of the unless you're just going back and forth, Monique. Who's your Mount Rushmore of female X-Men mutants? Oh, off the top of my head, that's a lot to get into. I mean, if I do off the top of my head, I would do Jean Grey, Rogue, Storm. Who else would I put in my Mount Rushmore of female X-Men characters? Am I missing an obvious one? I feel like I said 3 of the ones that I would definitely include in there. I would probably want to put in Miss Marvel, but I know that's technically like a little weird because they didn't really consider her, an X-Men for a while. So also good picks there, enterprising. But at least I got 3 there. I think Rogue, Storm, Jean Grey, who goes on to be, oh, you know what? Yeah, Mystique. I was like, I'm missing something really obvious there. Yeah, so there you go. That would be my Mount Rushmore of X-Men characters off the top of my head. But yeah, there we go. That's Mount Rushmore Monday of animated movies. You guys sent us your picks. We had some of ours. I think we're going to do this again next week because it seems to be a lot of fun. So we'll put the topics into another poll. The poll will go up likely later this week. And then over the weekend, we will pick the winning topic and they'll ask you for your pick. So keep an eye out on the channel. The topic poll goes up in the community post section on YouTube. So definitely go check that out. Right now, we have a poll up for Tier List Tuesday. Currently, I believe the 10 things that happened before GTS 6 is winning. So that will be on tomorrow's Tier List Tuesday show. So without further ado, let's move on to the quick hits. Olivia sharing her Mount Rushmore of X-Men female characters: Jean Grey, Storm, Kitty Pryde, and Magma. Those are also great. Yeah, you know what? I was thinking of Psylocke too, but I feel like Mystique for me is kind of trumps Psylocke. I was thinking about. I was like, I had the image in my mind. I'm like, do I want to I don't know, but that could be a great idea for a topic for next week. I think we could do an X-Men Mount Rushmore. Well, again, we'll put it in the poll and you guys decide if that's the one you vote for. So anyway, yeah. All right, let's move on. So now we get into the quick hits. Let me find the music for the quick hits. Where did it go? Oh, there it is. Okay. So we got some quick hits. I'll try to keep these quick. So Jacob Elordi, Teyana Taylor, Josh O'Connor, Jenna Ortega are the latest to be invited to join the Motion Picture Academy, basically the organization that gives out the Oscars. Happy 100th birthday to Mel Brooks. Yeah, tier list idea from Mel Brooks movies. That's a good one actually, Movie Spud. I'll make a note of that. Mel Brooks movies could be a good one, so we'll put that in the poll for next week. But yeah, the Academy also invited Inga daughter Lilius, Josh Gad, Josh, and Benny Safdie. So yeah, I mean, every year the Academy increases their voter base and the membership, and of course you see here it's a very diverse set of names, and also a lot of them on the younger side, like Josh O'Connor. You got Teyana Taylor, Jacob Elordi, Josh Gad. You got the Safdie brothers. So yeah, the Oscars are handed out by an organization of which the membership are the people that work in Hollywood. So that includes, of course, a lot of these names I just went through are actors. You also have Tig Notaro, who got offered, Bill Skarsgård, Jenny Slate, John Bernthal, Liz is gonna love that, Patty Considine, who was in House of the Dragon, Jermaine Clement, Julia Garner, nice, Mia Goth, Susie Eddie Izzard, Scoot McNairy, remember he was in Batman v Superman, he was in the wheelchair that blows up in the Capitol. So yeah, there you go. A lot of it, and these are just a few of the more well-known names. I mean, they invite a lot of people. So the Academy, again, diversifying, getting younger, and I think that's the right way to go about it. Yeah, happy birthday to Mel Brooks. Happy birthday indeed. Solar power DVD player in The Island is Sunny. I know, that was my criteria, Monique. That was my criteria. Okay, Jacob Elordi. This is something that was in Variety. I recommend you guys read the whole article because I think it's very interesting. I'm just going to go through the headline because I think it does a good job of summarizing it. But Jacob Elordi or Callum Turner should not be James Bond, according to an ex-007 casting directors who said that we know so much about them and the actor should be out of the blue. As in, Jacob Elordi and Callum Turner are both fairly well-known actors. I don't know if you would call them A-listers yet, but they certainly have, clearly got a following and they're known enough. And this, former casting director for previous James Bond movies would rather we go with more of an unknown. So not surprising there. And I hope that, I mean, we've talked about recently, they're trying to do a mix of known names and unknowns. So we'll see where they ultimately end up with who they pick for the next Bond. But John Oliver lands his dream role on General Hospital. Did not see that coming, but apparently he pleaded for a role on a daytime soap earlier this year. I'm sure he was doing it jokingly, and the long-running ABC series Obliged. I can totally see this working out fantastically. He looks super serious. I'm sure this is a dream come true, and I can't wait for him to actually address this on the next episode of his Last Week Tonight. God, I can't wait to see that. I'm sure the joke has a great punchline. But hey, the SWAT Exiles TV show, remember this is like a spin-off of the SWAT show that got canceled? That spin-off has landed at Starz in the US, and it's also set a premiere date, with Sony pretty much finding distribution for it all over the world. So it's going to be on Starz in the US, and Sony has managed to sell it to pretty much outlets all over the world. So depending on where you are outside of the US, you will be able to see this show if you like it. So yeah. And I absolutely agree with you, Monique. I think animation is so central to movie making. That's why I think like animated movies should be considered in the Best Picture category, not just in its own best animated feature category. But you know, that's a talk. That's a whole topic for another time. Colin Farrell was saying that playing John Sugar in his Apple TV show Sugar was a moral palate cleanser, quote unquote, after The Penguin. Of course, the Irish actor will soon be reprising his role as Oz Cobb for a third time in Matt Reeves' The Batman Part 2. I can totally get it. I think John Sugar is still not like the most morally nice character, but it's certainly a long ways off from like Oz Cobb, and mixing the flavors, I'm sure they taste better. But hey, Kristen Ritter, not only back in the world of Daredevil and the MCU, but she's also returning to Dexter Resurrection for season 2. So there we go. Kristen Ritter staying busy doing big things. Speaking of casting news, Lisa Vikander has joined Aaron Taylor Johnson in the upcoming Netflix limited series Enigma Variations, which I will keep saying, Enigma Variations is one of the coolest show titles. I don't care what the show is about, I will watch it just because the show's name sounds fun. It sounds very sci-fi-ish. But guys, we have our first look at the live action Tangled remake, which we've been talking about for I feel like months, and they've got some big cast members on board for the movie. Of course, I think Catherine Hahn joined in as well most recently, and then they've been starting to film. So we have a couple of looks at the Rapunzel Tower, and then Tegan Croft, who's going to play the lead role. She's got a new haircut. So here are the photos. There you go. Looks like they're building up the set here. Definitely, obviously doing some of this practically. I'm sure it's going to look better on camera, but I don't know, like, it's cool. It's in Spain. And of course, you got here on the left Tegan Croft, who's got short hair. So most likely she'll be wearing some kind of wig, because like Rapunzel's got to have like really long hair. So understandable, right? Enterprising. Hello, Morkatna. How are you doing? Would be cool to have Marvel DC did an animated movie universe with a polished art style of Arcane or something like that. Doing this, you can also mimic comic accurate costumes without fear or goofiness. Yeah, it's but you know what? Doing a crossover would always still have the same concerns as anything live action, because you're trying to balance things out, and it's very complicated, like who keeps what money. You got to negotiate a deal, and you know what, they do their own things separately. So there's like DC animation is starting to pick up again. So and Marvel has had some hits or misses. They have Marvel Zombies coming up, and they've got a bunch of stuff on Disney Plus. So it's happening separately, but together I'm not so sure. But hey, you know what, Netflix, you remember this story? We've covered this a few times. So this dude here, Carl Rinch, he basically swindled Netflix for $11 million. He got $11 million from Netflix, the whole Netflix in your greenlit thing, and he never used the money to make the movie he was supposed to make. Now, I don't know the entire context of this, but we finally got found out, and Netflix of course sued him. So he was being tried in court, and I think Keanu Reeves was like asking for maybe a kinder verdict from the court, and had pleaded with the judge, but it doesn't look like that worked, because Carl got himself some serious prison time out of this, and the judge condemned Carl's antics of money laundering and lies, which, I mean, yeah, dude, I mean, I appreciate the hustle, but 11 million is a lot of money, and I can't believe you got away for as long as you did get away with it. So, but hey, eventually Netflix will catch up to you, much like the bill then from Netflix catches up to me every month, because now it costs me like $40 freaking month to pay for Netflix, because I have a premium of everything, and I have an extra account holder, blah blah blah. Anyway, Olivia saying, what do you think that Wonder Woman still hasn't had her own animated TV series? I know you asked about this the other day, and I feel like it's because they're working on it probably, and Wonder Woman was just not much of a priority in the previous regimes. I mean, we got the live action one, but I think it was always going to be coming in the next few years, regardless of who was in charge. But it's just not been a priority. DC was a lot about Batman and Superman for years, or like more niche horror characters like Constantine. So, but that's changing. So hey, we'll probably get it in the not too distant future. Anyway, Jonah Hill's cut-off comedy with Kristen Wiig still doesn't have a release date, but there was a claim going around that it's apparently unreleasable. Even though Jonah Hill has described it as a classic comedy, comparing it to Step Brothers, Clueless, Trading Places. Now, since that claim that it's unreleasable, and that's the reason why it's not being released, because Puck News reported the film that was originally slated to release in July 17th of this year which would have been the same day as the Odyssey, so counter-programming the Odyssey, they reported that it doesn't have a date anymore because it was, according to Puck, viewed as unreleasable. But Warner Brothers responded to this later in the day, saying that it's actually not unreleasable. They pushed back on the idea. So I don't know who to believe, the Puck News, Matthew Bellany, or the spokesperson from Warner Brothers who's saying the speculation is inaccurate. I mean, in both respects, Matthew Bellany probably has less reason to lie because his journalistic integrity lies on it, whereas obviously the spokesperson for the studio is going to say, it's not unreleasable, because if it was truly unreleasable, that would not bode well for the studio. Oh no, they got another Batgirl on their hands. No studio wants to put that bad juju out in the world. So, enterprising. I mean, it's you're not maybe wrong, but also I think you can adapt. We've seen Wonder Woman in animation. DC animated movies used to have a lot of Wonder Woman stuff. I still wish that they did the live action version of the Lanteans versus the Amazonians story, but I'm sure we'll get it eventually. So anyway, we'll see if this movie eventually gets released or not. But did you guys see the new Werewolf trailer? Aaron Taylor Johnson doing great stuff right now. He's working on that show over at Netflix, the limited series that he just got Alicia Vikander as a co-star on. But also, he's got that upcoming movie coming out, Werewolf, which just released a trailer. Robert Eggers, doing his next big gothic horror project. I saw it. It's wild. It's if you're not a horror fan, maybe it's not for you. And I'm not a horror fan, so I'm not going to be rushing to see it necessarily. But it looks fantastic. It looks fantastic. I'm sure John would have been oozing over this movie, the trailer coming out today. I'll see if I can get you his thoughts later in the week. We'll see what Liz thinks about it too. But yeah, a Werewolf. I've seen the behind the scenes set photos. We saw the first look at Aaron Taylor Johnson in the movie the other day. So yeah, now the trailer's out. Go check it out for yourself. But speaking of checking it out for yourself, if you haven't already, you now can have a chance to go see Backrooms, an extended version of Backrooms in theaters, because it's going to be coming with an extra 15 minutes of bonus footage soon. So according to this article in Variety, if you are going to go see Backrooms over the 4th of July holiday, they're re-releasing it with 15 minutes of bonus footage in order to bring more fans to the theaters. I mean, the movie's still doing relatively well. It's not in the top 5 from this past weekend, but yeah, if you didn't see it already, or even if you did, go see the extra 15 minutes this weekend, especially with July 4th holidays in the US. So there you go. The last thing in Quick Hits is I saw this interview in Vanity Fair where Steven Spielberg was telling the story of how, the question was, who's the one director that you would want to sit and have dinner with? And he was Alfred Hitchcock. And then he talks about how back in the day, especially after Jaws came out and that was a big hit, and just Steven was I kind of wanted to go talk to Alfred Hitchcock. They walked onto a stage. He was filming a movie, and apparently, he walked onto the stage with one of his producers at the time, and they were let's see if he can go chat up Hitchcock or something. Maybe we can find some time to grab lunch with him, or we'll set up a time. And Hitchcock is sitting with his back to them as they enter the soundstage, and I don't think the way Spielberg describes it, Hitchcock didn't move. He wasn't looking at them, but then he calls over an assistant director who walks up to him and he whispers in his ear, and then the assistant director looks directly at Spielberg and says, "You guys need to leave. You guys need to leave the soundstage." And it was no reason why, because I clearly Hitchcock noticed that Steven Spielberg and his producer walked onto the soundstage, but yeah, I don't know, Steven Spielberg never got a chance to have that conversation or dinner with Alfred Hitchcock. I mean, look, Steven Spielberg wasn't back when Alfred Hitchcock was still around, Steven Spielberg wasn't considered one of the greatest of all time in terms of directors. He was a rising star, but he wasn't the Steven Spielberg today. He hadn't done Schindler's List. He hadn't done Saving Private Ryan. He hadn't yet done I don't know if he hadn't done the Close Encounters yet. He was still really early in his career, or Jurassic Park, Indiana Jones. So I mean, it's just fun to see Steven Spielberg, probably the GOAT for many. He still wishes that, despite what happened, he was I still would like to do a dinner with Alfred Hitchcock. I had so many questions for him. I want to pick his brain. He's one of the GOATs. So, and you know what? I guess he never found out like why Alfred Hitchcock kicked him off the set, despite the fact that they never actually met. But who knows? I mean, I guess those secrets went to the grave with Hitchcock himself. So, but yeah, you know what? I just thought this was kind of cool. I thought it was kind of cool. Like even the greats, you know, have like Steven Spielberg's like, man, he's, you know, he knows how good of a filmmaker he is, but even he's like, you know, I really do wish I had a chance to talk to Hitchcock once upon a time. But you know, obviously he's not really gonna get that wish today, because if you guys didn't know, Alfred Hitchcock is not with us anymore. So there you go. But you know what? That's the end of the quick hits. So without further ado, it's about time to get into DCU Daily. It's going to be a lot of fun. Well, it depends on your definition of fun. We do have more than just Supergirl to talk about, so definitely stick around if you are watching. Thank you, of course, for tuning in, and I really appreciate you guys sticking around. Of course, I'm running it solo today, so you know it takes a extra second or two for me to switch things over. But without further ado, let's get blessed, and you know, then we will take it from the beginning.
It's another project that's been blessed from the beginning.
There's the shot right there. That
Okay, we don't need to see chorus.
right there.
Hey, buddy. Eyes up here.
Now you want to get nuts?
Let's get nuts.
Here we go.
Victory mine. Ask me how am I doing? I'm telling you, really, I'm doing sublime. I never wait in a stewardess line. I just go do it. I'm moving my time. Really had nothing to do with it. How am I moving? I'm moving like you want to shine. Follow my lead. Don't listen to lies. I had to put me all on the line. That's why I know that victory's mine.
I prefer Jared Leto.
Okay. I was just wiping my eyes a little bit. But welcome on in to another episode of DCU Daily. Yo, hi, Georgie. You want to say hi? Yeah? Georgie's here to say hello. But yeah, we got a lot of DC stuff to get into today. We're going to talk about potentially a DCU Batman. We're going to talk a lot about, you know, Supergirl. And of course, we have some other quick hits. We got some updates from James Gunn about Man of Tomorrow. Clayface. Of course, we have some updates about that as well. So lots to get into. And like I said, guys, we're going to talk about Supergirl. We're going to talk about what happened at the box office. I'm not here to bash the movie. We're just going to focus on, you know, why it didn't work. And we'll, you know, take a look at some of what you know, the outlets online are talking about. Not trying to be hyperbolic, but you know what? The movie isn't doing as well at the box office as it needed to, certainly to make its money back. So we will definitely get into it. Don't worry, Jalen. Again, it's not the end of the world for DC, regardless of how Supergirl does. Like, no single project is going to destroy an entire cinematic universe. That's just, even Martha couldn't destroy the entire DCEU. It took like death by 1,000 cuts for the DCE to finally die. But, you know, one could make the argument that that was the beginning of the end. But who knows? You know what? That's a whole topic unto itself. Let's just start with some quick hits. And because Supergirl is such a big focus on today's DCU Daily, I have to start with just talking about how there were reports going around that apparently, secretly, James Gunn and Peter Safran over at DC Studios may have already cast their DCU Batman. We just don't, you know, or we just not that we don't know. We just haven't been told yet. Because this kind of originated from, you know, John Campea, his channel on YouTube. He was talking about like he's talked to a few of his reliable sources and who are in the know, who work in the industry at the studio level, and that confirmed to him who this actor is, who supposedly signed up for Batman. Now, of course, I think John Campea years ago was like first to kind of mention or break the news that Ben Affleck had left the role of Batman. I think it was months before we actually found out that he was no longer going to be Batman. He was stepping away from the movie he was going to be making, the solo Batman movie in the DCEU. But, you know, it doesn't always hold, you know, because information could be iffy and could change. But John Campea was saying that it's certainly not a name that he would have guessed, and his sources are well positioned. So, again, take it with a grain of salt, because, well, John Campea would have named the actor, and no, it's not Elliot Page Nelson, but other scoopers on the internet have put a name out there, and the name seems to be the English actor Tom Brittney. If you guys don't know Tom Brittney, he's been in a few projects. Like he was in Black Box. I saw him in Greyhound, which is a Tom Hanks movie on Apple TV, which I think was like made by Skydance or Paramount. I think it was. It's a couple of years old now, but he was in that. Fall to Dead Point is another project. He was actually one of the finalists to play DCU Superman. David Cornsword obviously ended up being Superman. Another finalist, Nicholas Hoult, ended up becoming Lex Luthor. So, like maybe Tom Brittney left enough of an impression on James Gunn, Peter Safran, then they went back to him and was like, do you want to audition for Batman? Like, it wouldn't be the first time. Like, Tom Hiddleston auditioned for Thor, ended up playing Loki. Like, we have seen this happen before. So, but again, take this with a grain of salt. Tom Brittney is certainly not a well-known actor by any degree. Like, if his most well-known projects are Greyhound and Black Box, then, I don't think a lot of people would be like, oh, Tom Brittney, like, he's Batman. Like, nobody's gonna recognize him. Hi, Marvel Cuphead, saying Supergirl, I enjoyed the movie. Nice, that's awesome, man. A lot of us enjoyed the movie. I don't think that was the problem with the film. I think not enough people have gone to see it. And it's like, I think it's not been a home run. I think that's been the reason why it's struggling. Can I see Tom Brittney as Batman? Nelson, that's a good question. He was in that show Grantchester. I don't know. I looked at some of his photos. Let me see if they're in here somewhere. Here you go. This is what the man looks like. If it is indeed Tom Brittney, I mean, he's got like his eyes sort of speak villainy kind of thing to me. But again, Batman does need to have a bit of an edge, and he is in a lot of respects like traditionally handsome. He's got the jawline. Are those blue? Are those light brown eyes? It's like the eyes are what throwing me off, but you can do lenses to cover that up if you want to change his eye color for any reason. You know what though? You were right, Eric. Everyone who has ever been cast as Batman never looked like a Batman until they became Batman, right? It's like, who would have thought Robert Pattinson would be freaking Batman? I don't think anybody could visualize Michael Keaton playing Batman when he got cast as Batman. Same with Christian Bale. I mean, Batfleck was a huge controversy. Oh, you're gonna have Ben Affleck play Batman, the guy from Pearl Harbor? Although, like, he had done Argo at that point, so his reputation was very different at the time. But, yeah, I mean, people always react negatively to these kind of big fan castings. Like, it's like James Bond. It's like the two biggest roles in all of Hollywood: James Bond and Batman. People have reacted with like very, very harsh opinions. Yeah, you gotta wait till you see the performance. But yeah, and you know what? Clayface, hopefully Marvel Cuphead does do well. We'll talk about that later too in context of Supergirl. So far, the early reports are a lot of insiders look at Clayface as having, some really good buzz around it, and the break-even point financially is a lot lower. So hopefully that will play in its favor. But yeah, I mean, Tom Brittney. Yeah, he certainly looks different than any Batman I've seen. I would not have picked him as a choice. I think, you know what? No, I think we did have him in at least one of our Batman fan castings. I don't know if it was one of the more recent ones, but I feel like his name has come up. And if we didn't include him in there, I certainly think one of you guys suggested it, that maybe Tom Brittney could be a good Batman. I know, Eric, like I've seen the old news tapes and newsreels of like Michael Keaton, Mr. Mom is Batman. It's like, that shit did not age well at all. MTG saying, do you think Man of Tomorrow could be part one of a 2-part story? They said they know what the next movie will be and Kara's a big part of it. You know what? I have been wondering what they meant by that, because that must mean the movie after that has some narrative connection, or obviously it's another super family focused project. So it's possible, but I mean, much like James Gunn is saying Man of Tomorrow is not really a Superman sequel, I'm sure he's going to tell you that, whatever comes after Man of Tomorrow is not a Man of Tomorrow sequel. It's just the next chapter in the story. So I wouldn't be surprised. Like, maybe it leads to a Justice League movie. Maybe that's what it is. And then clearly Kara is being set up as like one of the big hitters in the DCU. Like, she was part of the Justice Gang that showed up in Peacemaker's season 1 retcon ending. So yeah, it's very possible. It's hard to tell this early. How old is Tom Brittney? That's a good question. Let's look it up. I think he's 35. He is. He was born in October 26, 1990. So he's 35. Again, he's making the rounds. It's going viral that he's the confirmed Batman. Is he though? We don't really know for sure. And I don't think, look, here's the thing. As far as like John Campea logic goes, he's not wrong about the idea that he has mentioned in the past. Usually you're signing the paperwork and signing on the dotted line months before it becomes public. Like Ben Affleck mentioned this. He was like, when I saw all the reporting around me becoming Batman for the DCEU, I had signed the paperwork and actually got the deal done like 6 months before. So it's very true. It does happen. It's not always that it leaks pretty much as it happens. Sometimes it does. So it is possible that, I mean, especially if they're going to have him make some kind of a cameo in the upcoming Man of Tomorrow movie, which James Gunn has said before that the first time you'll see Batman will likely be in his own movie. Same for Wonder Woman. So he would have to go back on his word if he were to do that. So yeah, we'll see. But hello, Anthony. Guys, by the way, please hit the like button while you're here watching. Really appreciate it. And I agree with you, Anthony. Tom definitely has the jawline going for him. So I could definitely feel, I could see it. Like if I had enough time to Photoshop him into a Batman costume and a cowl and the cape and the eye makeup, and I'm like, I could see it. I don't remember how deep his voice is or otherwise, but I'm sure he will sound great. Like they'll do some kind of voice modulation for the Batman suit thing, whether he just lowers his voice or it's some kind of voice modulation, but like Batfleck did. But he's got the jawline. I can see it physically, like him standing toe to toe and looking intimidating next to Superman. So yeah. Marvel Cuphead likes it too. Good casting. It's one of those things where he's a relative newcomer or an unknown, which we talked about before. I feel like the only actor that we've ever seen cast as Batman on like for a feature film that was previously known was Ben Affleck. He was like truly the only A-lister who ever got cast as Batman. Like Christian Bale was not a relative unknown, but he wasn't really like an A-lister when he got cast as Batman back in the day. Certainly not Michael Keaton. They were known, but they weren't like superstars. I mean, Robert Pattinson, you could kind of say that. Like he's also another known name because he had a big franchise with Twilight before. But yeah, it's still like Tom Brittney is certainly no Robert Pattinson in terms of his resume. It's certainly not even like Christian Bale or like Michael Keaton had Mr. Mom on his resume and a few other movies at the time. So, but he does look young. I mean, he may be 35. He is British. He certainly looks younger than 35. But you know what? This Batman is meant to kind of be a little bit older. He's meant to be old enough to like, if you're still going down the Damian Wayne route, to like have a teenage son, you know? So he doesn't need to be like 20 some odd years old. If Robert Pattinson's playing some dude in his 20s and he's 40, then Tom Brittney at 35 could definitely pull off Batman. Yeah, approved. Put him in a post-credit scene. Pronto. Got it, M2G. And hello, Terrence. Agreed, saying the same thing. Look, it seems like the internet is generally reacting well. If this does turn out to be true, and it is Tom Brittney, who's our DCU Batman, then that's not a bad pick. And it also, you know, a lot of the pieces line up because he is somebody that we have talked about in the past. He already auditioned for Superman for the DCU, and he was one of the 3 finalists. So we have seen before how, you know, actors who have auditioned for another role get chosen for a different role in the same continuity. I mentioned Tom Hiddleston auditioned for Thor, ended up, you know, becoming Loki. And of course, we have talked about how Nicholas Hoult auditioned for Superman, ended up becoming Lex Luthor. So why not Tom Brittney, you know, auditioning for Superman and then later on going on to play Batman? You could certainly see it, you know, like working out. So, but I'm gonna say if he is indeed Batman, it's probably because they're getting really close to the finished script for Batman for the DCU, and so they're going through the casting process now. I don't think it's because he's gonna make a cameo in Man of Tomorrow, or if he does, you're more likely to see him as Bruce Wayne, and not as Batman. I don't, because like you won't have a suit. Like if you're gonna show him as Batman in the Man of Tomorrow, you need to design a suit, and the suit design process is very extensive. And it's not like you can do what they did with Supergirl's suit. They even upgraded that quite significantly. But Batman is way bigger of a character. You can't do a suit and then do a completely different suit or a much upgraded one. I mean, like you can technically do it, but you don't want to do that, I don't think. So if you were to make a cameo, it's more likely as Bruce Wayne, is all I'll say. But even then, James Gunn explicitly said you will not see him before the Batman movie. So maybe that means that Christina Hodson is almost done with that script. So we'll see. That was way longer than a quick it should be. But anyway, let's move on. I saw this earlier this evening from Superman homepage.com. They were talking about how the Jimmy Olsen series is setting its sights on August to start filming, and they're already starting to cast the Gorilla Grodd character. They're going to be doing they're in the process of doing that. So according to this report, Budget issues reportedly delayed the green light, shifting the shoot from overlapping with Man of Tomorrow to starting right as that production wraps, which I'm sure works out for James Gunn, because if it was going to be overlapping like what he did for Peacemaker and Superman, he would have been able to go back and forth between the sound stages. But now if he's done with Man of Tomorrow, he could probably just show up on the set and, like, maybe even direct our episode or two. So Nexus Point News were the ones who reported it initially. Of course, we first heard about the show last year, and it looks like now, after those delays, they're going to be starting to film the show from August to October in Atlanta. And HBO, of course, confirmed that they did pick this up earlier this year. So yes, we know where the show is going to end up, and the casting is underway for the co-lead of the show, Gorilla Grodd. I don't know if he's a co-lead, but we'll see. But they're looking at comedic actors for the voiceover role. A lawyer role is also being cast, with speculation that a Grodd on trial storyline will take place within the show's true crime documentary format. Interesting. Which follows Jimmy investigating DCU's villains. All right, Jimmy Olsen. Okay. American Vandal creators Dan Perot and Tony Yacenda developed the series and serve as writers, directors, showrunners, with James Gunn, Peter Safran serving as executive producers, and of course Skylar Gisondo is going to reprise his role as Jimmy Olsen. So yeah, if they're shooting from August to October, I'd imagine this is probably going to end up on HBO sometime next summer. Like, that would make sense. I mean, obviously the VFX for Gorilla Grodd are going to be a bitch, but like, I imagine they have a plan for that, and maybe that's why the budget was a bit of an issue. So I'm sure they figured it out. Yeah, Gunn just makes all the big moves. I mean, look, it's the whole universe, right? That's the whole idea behind what they're doing now. They're not just making one project at a time, and they're doing it across all different mediums. So they have. If we know about 5 projects that are in the works in different stages of production, they're probably talking about 10 or 15 at a time. It's just we only get to see the tip of the iceberg with what's going on in the halls of as with most movie studios. Like, we only get to see a very small sliver of what either they let you know or what leaks through like other inside sources. Yeah, I don't think the show has to be rated R. I mean, I wouldn't. It's on HBO, so it can be, but it doesn't need to be. I would probably TVMA if anything. But I mean, if it's made for HBO, then HBO's got a bar for quality. So I think that's always a good sign. But yeah, August to October in Atlanta. That sounds like a good timeline to me. Speaking of filming, James Gunn posted day 49 on the set of Man of Tomorrow, and the fact that this whole thing is all about Alan Tudyk, including all of his DC characters and otherwise, I'm pretty sure Alan Tudyk is either voicing a or multiple characters in the new Man of Tomorrow movie. We already know he's working with them. What was it? Millie Alcock talked about the other day in one of her podcast interviews that when she was on set, she shot some stuff with Alan Tudyk. Like, she implied that she was shooting with him because she was like, he's one of the funniest people out there. So we know Alan Tudyk is in the movie in some respect. He could be physically in the movie, like on screen, but given that he's voiced so many characters, I'd imagine it's more likely voicing some characters. So whether it's the Superman robots or otherwise, we'll see. But it does look like day 49 was a big Alan Tudyk day for James Gunn and Man of Tomorrow. So there we go. Continuing with filming that movie. Now, somebody actually in that comments kind of suggested an idea that I wanted to run by you guys. So you let me know in the chat, what do you think about this? I thought this was really interesting. So let me see what the username was. Fabrizio MC8 asked, James, as in James Gunn, if you happen to see this, please consider Frida Gustafsson for Diana Prince / Wonder Woman. She's a good actress, young, beautiful, and tall. She's 6'1". There you go. If you guys think the height really matters. She said she would love to play Wonder Woman in the new DCU. So I guess she's already pitched herself. And, well, she's certainly got the height down. She's young and beautiful, which I don't know how, I mean, sure, like, I'm sure casting directors will appreciate that. I really don't know much of her work, honestly. So I don't know. What do you guys think? Do you think that Frida Gustafsson could make a good, Diana Prince, and Wonder Woman? That she looks like she could be a good fit. I don't know. I generally don't know though about her past work. So yeah, it would be interesting. By the way, if Jimmy's show is based on The Wire, they already said it's like more comedic, real crime documentary style. So I don't know if The Wire is exactly the reference they're using for the Jimmy Olsen show. Yeah, I don't think Frida Gustafsson's a very well-known name, but maybe some of you guys know her. Clearly this person here who asked James Gunn seems to think she'd be a great pick. Uh, you know what, Eric? You're right. James Gunn is gonna go to Brazil to find his Wonder Woman. The thinly veiled fetish that he's got. Dude, he's got good taste in beautiful Latino women. Like what can we say? I mean, look, Eva Dominici or Adria Arjona are currently the front runners, so you're not wrong, Eric. But let's talk about Clayface for a moment. According to DC Film News, Clayface is gearing up for pickup shots from June 30th to July 1st. So that was literally today when the show started, and then or actually no, today Tuesday. Well, it is past midnight when I'm doing the show right now. So Tuesday to Wednesday this week, they're going to be doing some pickup shots at the old Birkenhead Tunnel entrance in Viral. Okay, so cool. Clayface is going to do a couple of days of pickups. Probably not all that significant. Pickups are usually pretty minor. They'll go get some shots on location that they missed out on. It's usually to stitch pieces together in the movie that they didn't think like were working without those extra shots. So, yeah, cool. I don't think this means anything bad for the movie. It's part of the process, and at the studio level, they usually have part of the budget assigned to this stuff from the beginning, so it's good. Yeah, MTG stamped his passport yesterday for Argentina. Yeah, there we go. I'm sure James Gunn knows a thing or two about that too. But I saw this over the weekend. I'm sure you guys saw this. So they released more of those images from clearly what were screen tests for the first time that David Cornsweet put on the suit, the Superman suit from the movie last year. And we saw some of these images in black and white before, but now we got color images released. And they look great. I like the suit. Again, it's the same suit that we saw in the movie. It looks pretty much like the same suit we're getting in Man of Tomorrow. And it looks good. I know some people kind of mistook what this was for. This is not from Man of Tomorrow. These images are from Superman, and they were screen testing essentially. Like there's some footage of this out there from some of the behind the scenes stuff, and clearly they're doing screen tests. They're trying to figure out like how he looks in certain poses. You're trying to make make sure the suit looks good on him. And yeah, I don't know if Clayface is gonna have a post-credit scene. Clearly, it's not a big priority. Marvel Cuphead for DC for James Gunn, but we'll see. Supergirl didn't have any. They're great shots. These shots of Superman, and you could tell here like how early in the game this was, because Peter Safran's wearing that old, sort of in the works version of the DC Studios logo that I know went viral. But then obviously the DC Studios logo today looks very different. You see it on screen here on the broadcast, but the DC Studios logo hoodie. I'm sure Peter Safran has that hoodie still, but it's not the one that they sell on their website. So the suit looks great. Hunter Iggy asking, do you think we'll get a live wire Metallo in the Jimmy Olsen show? Well, we know Metallo exists, and Superman fought him and beat him, according to a headline in one of the Daily Planet papers that we saw in the marketing campaign for Superman. So maybe Metallo is like jailed somewhere. Maybe it could be, live wire. Also, it's possible. Anything is possible. I cannot tell you for sure, but there's a non-zero chance it could happen. Yeah, I love the colors here because, again, we have seen these photos in black and white before, but clearly, David Cornsweet, probably one of the biggest days of his career. His Superman is still one of his, probably the biggest single project of his career still. Like, it's literally changed the career trajectory for him. Hi, Windio4. May I suggest Penelope Cruz as Jessica Cruz? You know what, man? Penelope Cruz 20 years ago for Jessica Cruz would be perfect. The reason why I say that is not because I'm trying to be ageist. It's just Jessica Cruz usually is portrayed as much younger. But you know what? Honestly, on some level, I will take Penelope Cruz and Jessica Cruz. Yes, I'll take it. Even though it's most likely not going to happen. But you know what? Penelope Cruz can pull it off. I will give her that. Yeah. No, I know M2G. He's putting a lot of respect on Superman. And that's good, but I don't know. Like it does concern me a little bit. By the way, this is really cool. I saw somebody posted the OG poster for the Supergirl movie from, I think it was the 80s. Nobody remembers it exists, but it did. Helen Slater as Supergirl. It wasn't very well reviewed either. By the way, I did want to point out something. I saw somebody online posting like, why didn't they use these test photos as the first look at Superman? We got the photo of him like lacing up his boots or something in his apartment, as his first look a couple of years ago. I just want to say the reason why they didn't use these photos, like of David Cornsweet doing the camera test, is because they're camera tests. Like the suit still probably wasn't completely finalized. It's hard to tell the differences, but there were differences. Like especially the fitting wasn't perfect. It's close, but also like they're clearly doing camera tests. Like he's not on. I think they were like, we want to show Superman in his environment, so that's why they used the image of him in his apartment with like the space imps in the background, which we speculated were some Green Lantern related thing for years. It was Green Lantern related ultimately, but you know, space imps is not, I think, anybody's theory that's what we were seeing in that photo. But anyway, who, Jenna Ortega from, I don't know if Jenna Ortega is from Brazil. That's a good question. But anyway, let's keep going. Back to the Supergirl stuff. Okay, so before we get into all the Supergirl, why did it flop and all that talk, there are people liking the movie. Like this person here, Ibi Yu-Gi-Oh, said, all right, so I saw all the critics' reviews before my first viewing. They put this on Threads. I went in expecting a bad movie, ended up loving it and rating it at 8 out of 10. I enjoyed it so much. I took some of my friends to see it in IMAX. Then they enjoyed it and thought it was fun, but they both rated it a 7 out of 10. My point is, go see a movie and don't listen to, what reviews say. It doesn't have to be Avengers Endgame every single movie. This is the beginning of an amazing universe. Yeah, see, so like there are people out there. This is just some random person on Threads who liked the movie. So yeah, look, I gave it a 7.5 out of 10. John did the same. Liz gave it a 7 out of 10. So again, we're kind of in the same neighborhood. So yeah, and this is the person who thought they should have used this Superman photo as his first look. I already explained why I think that they didn't do that. So anyway, but yeah, you know what? I was watching the World Cup earlier. There was some banger games today, like Netherlands and Germany getting knocked out in the penalty shootouts. But yeah, Supergirl's marketing team jumping on the hype with the little crypto times World Cup promo. Interesting stuff. I'm sure crypto would be great at football or soccer, depending on where you play. But you know what? Hideo Kojima also saw Supergirl, and he sent us his thoughts. So he said, I saw Supergirl in IMAX. It wasn't a superhero movie, quote unquote, about saving the earth through self-sacrifice as justice confronts evil. It was a coming-of-age story about saving oneself, Kara, as she struggles with her own trauma, saying structurally it feels less like Mad Max Fury Road, which everybody we saw on social media seemingly was comparing it to Mad Max for some reason last week, but here we go. Hideo saying, where everyone is driven purely by survival instinct in Mad Max beyond notions of good and evil, but it's more like the good, bad, and the ugly, where heroes, villains, and scoundrels all converge. Which, you know what, I think Hideo is onto something good there, and it is true. I still think Supergirl feels like a movie that, like I said, could have been 20 minutes longer. The VFX could have been a little bit better, like the environments and the cinematography and the world building, the set design could have been slightly better. It's just, it feels like for me Supergirl is more just an imperfect movie, and it's good but not great, and I think that's why it's struggling financially. It also doesn't help that the character is not as well known as Superman or Batman. And in a world where Superman still struggles to sell tickets abroad, like beyond the US market, I think Supergirl is doing, the same thing. Like it's the same struggle here. We'll talk about that in a few minutes. But Hideo Kojima liked the movie. So, again, there are people out there, including some very well-known folks who know what they're talking about. Yeah, and then you know what, M2G, I completely agree with you. I think the editing was part of the problem. They definitely kind of cut that movie within an inch of its life. Yeah, and you know what? I don't think Craig Gillespie is going to be doing another DC movie anytime soon. Usually when this kind of thing happens with a movie and it's a spectacular flop, I mean, he pitched himself as a director and James Gunn and Peter Safran hired him, and he's got a few good movies under his belt. I just don't think this was the right film for him, because while he's great at, working with, female actresses who are leading their own movies like Cruella, I, Tonya, I just think this particular genre required a different kind of focus, and maybe you could have found maybe a female director, like Patty Jenkins did great with Wonder Woman, and that's not even the only example. I'm forgetting who did the Bone Temple earlier this year. Some of you guys will tell me in the chat. I think she's a great Ava DuVernay. I always wish she actually did her Fourth World movie with New Gods. There's plenty of great female directors out there. Greta Gerwig obviously doing Narnia right now, so gonna go see it. I love Kojima. I love Death Stranding. Just beat the director's cut. Yeah. Eric, let us know what you think about the movie when you Nia DaCosta. Thank you. Yeah, Nia DaCosta. Again, there's plenty of. I mean, she did the Marvels too, right? But like, she did Bone Temple. So like, not everybody's gonna hit everything out of the park. I also thought the Marvels wasn't a bad movie. It just wasn't like a great movie. It also was a movie that had characters that were not very well known, or like were only known in Disney Plus shows. So I think Supergirl has some of the same issues, unfortunately. But David Krumholtz in the movie plays Supergirl's father, Zor-El. He says, he confirmed it. Seth Rogen's tiny assistant bus driver thing in Supergirl extremely funny. So yeah, I mean, if you guys were still wondering, it was indeed Seth Rogen playing that tiny assistant bus driver dude. So yeah. For Wonder Woman, maybe a Wonder Woman director fan cast for Friday. You know what? I will put that on the Fan Cast Friday poll tomorrow. Wonder Woman fan cast, director casting. I think that would be very relevant right now. Well, the Marvels was colorful, but also Supergirl had plenty of color too. It's not like it didn't have color. I think it was missing the right set of color. It just had that murky palette, which just stunk of like, underdeveloped VFX. And I don't think it was an issue of like they didn't have enough money. I think it's just the art direction wasn't quite there. And I'll get into that more as we get into the Supergirl, why it flopped, because I have some ideas of why. I mean, like, if you had a different director take the reins, like, and I have a name that I don't think a lot of people are bringing up who could have done a great job with it, but also there's a reason why they weren't involved or wouldn't have been, able to take the movie. But the Woman King director was also that movie was fantastic. I'm gonna look up the name of the director. It was directed by Gina Prince Bythewood. Yeah, she would have also been a good choice. I don't know if she's necessarily interested or if she's doing other projects, but yeah, there's lots of again, they made a choice. And Craig Gillespie, talked about it last week in an interview that we talked about on the show, where he didn't even read the comic. He just straight read the script, had a vision of what he thought that looked like in his head, pitched it, and then James Gunn was like, you use this as your graphic novel. Like, what Tom King did is what Tom King did. And I mean, I'm sure Craig Gillespie eventually got around to reading or browsing some of the imagery in Woman of Tomorrow. It just doesn't feel like, it does kind of feel like, though, ultimately that wasn't the biggest inspiration, which I'm like, you pitched it as Woman of Tomorrow adapted for the screen, and nobody expected it to be a one-for-one adaptation, but like, holy shit, like, your director didn't even bother to read the comic book. Like, that's some essential homework that he missed out on, Craig. But yeah, okay, so according to Ana Noguera, talking about the end, now we're getting into spoiler territory, because it's been a weekend, and so we talked about it Monday. We'll get into spoiler territory with Supergirl. So oh yeah, she is doing Blood and Bone, the Children of Blood and Bone. Yeah, Gina Prince is busy, man. That's gonna be a big franchise for Paramount. So yeah, good for her, man. That's well earned for her. But anyway, so Supergirl, Ana Noguera was talking about the ending of the movie, which, if you guys have seen it, if you guys have read the comic book, Krem does end up dying. In the case of the movie, it is at the hands of Kara. So Ana Noguera was talking about this, and now we're talking about it in spoiler mode because it's been a few days, so I figured we were in that time zone. But she said the ending between Kara and Krem was always in it from the pitch, because the comic ends with Ruthie killing Krem. But in the far, far future, we knew we weren't going to be able to do that kind of time jump. And I find it's quite a dark ending of the comic. So, and John talked about this, like, in the comic, they skip forward, I think it's like, 300 years. And then they get Krem out of the Phantom Zone. Ruthie kind of bops him on the head with her cane, like old Ruthie. And then like Krem is like falls over. Although, like, Tom King recently mentioned that then in the comic, Ruthie writes a book where the ending is depicted as her killing him, even though in the continuity of the comic she didn't kill him, which apparently has been a source of confusion. John believes that she did kill him in the comic. I haven't gone to the ending of it myself, so I can't speak to it personally, but I've heard people in comments over the weekend on our channel talk about it. So did Ruthie actually kill Krem? Because Ana Negreira seems to believe she did, but Tom King says no. So I don't know. Like, it's confusing, but yeah, I mean, M2G saying he just looked into it. Krem actually survived that bop on the head. There you go. So it's Ruthie didn't kill him, but I won't lie, I thought she did when I read it. Exactly. That's pretty damn confusing. The fact that Ana Negreira seems to think that Ruthie did kill Krem in the comic, and Tom King said the other thing, and I've heard it both ways from you guys and everyone on the internet. I'm like, I blame that on the writer. Like, Tom King, it's your fault that you confuse so many people as to whether Ruthie actually killed Krem or not. And you shouldn't have to provide clarity on it in an interview years after you wrote the comic, you know? But anyways, Ana Negreira seems to think that Ruthie did kill him. So there you go. That goes to show you what Ana Negreira thought. So in her mind, she was changing that, and she went on to say, so we wanted to craft a villain who would deserve this, but we also wanted Kara to care about preserving Ruthie's innocence and to feel like she could take on killing him, like she could be the one to bring justice to this man and do it without burdening the child is different for Supergirl, and I think it will feel different for audiences. Honestly, when I read this and I was like, look, I understand logically what she's saying, but it's so contrary to I think what would have been the most elegant screenwriting solution to how you end the story. Because on one hand, you have Captain America Brave New World, where Anthony Mackie's trying to negotiate his way out of the Red Hulk situation. And, we talk about amnesty and give people a second chance with the Thunderbolts and stuff. And that's also been the case in DC movies too. It's not just a Marvel thing. And then you have this, where there's a lot of people who have kind of argued that the ending of the movie feels weird. And to me, it didn't feel completely out of the ordinary. I'm also not somebody who is oh my God, my superhero should not kill. I'm like, Batman kills, Superman has killed, and not just in the iterations you love or hate. It's been, it happened across many different iterations in the comics, on screen, big screen, small screen. So it wasn't Supergirl shouldn't kill because that's her moral code, the no kill rule. But it has been a point of conversation online and amongst the fan base. So M2G loved the ending, and that's why John hates Tom King. There you go. Yeah, I finally figured it out, John. Or Enterprising. Krem moves his arm in the last strip. There you go. Yeah, kind of like the sand, the dirt moves on top of Superman's coffin at the end of BBS. The fact that some fans want Anna to lose her work over this comment, yeah, I think that's a little extreme. I will say though, clearly, what I'm getting the understanding of here is when James Gunn, Peter Safran pitched this as a Woman of Tomorrow, great comic, we're adapting it. I think they really oversold it because they got a director who didn't, on all accounts, didn't read the comic book, didn't really care for the artwork, and mostly just went off his own ideas, which we've talked about, a script is a blueprint. If you read a script, 5 people can read the same script and it can look like a completely different movie in each of their minds. There could be 5 different movies playing in their heads. So to not read the source material that it's based on, and then for Ana Negreira to kind of misunderstand the ending of that source material. And there's something flawed about, it's not even the flaw in the logic of the movie. I think there's a flaw here about, and I'm not saying Ana Negreira should not be writing Wonder Woman or should not be writing the Teen Titans movie. I think let her do, she's got the job, James Gunn trusts her. This could be just her one bad day at the office, right? For me, it takes a pattern, death by 1,000 cuts. If it happens more than once, then it becomes concerning. If it happens 3 times, it's the whole 3-strike rule. I think that's where I will go with that. But I do worry because the logic here kind of, I'm like, is this just showcasing that she is a bit of a novice writer in the sense that she doesn't have a ton of credits? Just because you don't have a ton of credits doesn't mean you haven't written a bunch of stuff. She wrote 2 different Supergirl movies before this one that never got made. And she clearly wrote a little bit of what we got from Sasha Kaya's Supergirl for the Flash movie. It's just, she doesn't have a lot of big name credits on her resume. But I do worry when she talks about how we wanted a villain who deserves to die, but we also wanted Kara to care about preserving Ruthie's innocence and to feel like she could take on killing him. And she could be the one to bring justice to this man. Now, and do I get the idea of do not burden the child? Here's the example I'll bring up, right? Because it's also in the House of DC. Like like it's just it's right across, not even across the street. It's literally the next room over. You walk out of the room of Supergirl and you walk in the room of the Batman. The clear direct comparison here with the logic that Ana Aguirre is using here, and it's not even just the Batman. You can extend it further beyond Batman. Or not just that iteration of Batman. You can extend it to the Christian Bale Batman. You can extend it to other DC characters where, like in the Batman, Catwoman, Selena Kyle wants to kill her bastard father, right? She wants to kill, the Falcone. Like she's just like, this guy raped my mother and, then practically disowned me and has, then literally killed my best friend. And Batman stops her from shooting him because she's like, once you do it, you go down that path, you're never going back. And it's also that, like, it's not going to bring you peace. Like, vengeance isn't going to do it for you. Believe me, I've been there. And Bruce Wayne, of all people, can relate to that. And we see that theme through every iteration of Bruce Wayne, but especially in that context. But what Batman doesn't do after is take the gun from Selena Kyle and then, like, let Selena walk out the room and then shoot Falcone himself. He tries to turn him into the police, and then it's the Riddler that kills, the Falcone. Like, it's just one of those things where I'm like, clearly for Batman, justice is bringing him in for the police for him to get a trial, and you follow the rule of law, and then you punish him. And if capital punishment is a thing in Gotham City, then that's what it is. But if he's gonna go for prison for life, he goes to prison for life, whatever the case is. To me, that part of it was a little off. Now, I guess, like, this is an alien planet, like, she's Kryptonian and Zakara's, I don't know what her moral compass is and all that. And I'm at the end of the day, I'm like, if it's just like she says, like, this is for my dog, and she stabs him in the chest, and then this is for that little girl and her family, and then she stabs him in the neck. I'm like, they got away with that being a PG-13 movie because there wasn't, like, a ton of blood gushing out. But it's just not the notion of justice that we are used to from Superman and Batman and those other bigger characters. But so to me, that was a little off-putting in that sense. But I'm like, I can understand that this is what makes Supergirl different. Like, she's not nice, but she's good. But I'm like, okay, but, like, she still killed a man who was defenseless. But whatever. It didn't bother me, honestly. It's more like it's been a point of conversation online since that's more why I'm talking about it to this length. MTG saying biggest problem with this movie was it was too mature for kids, in my opinion. Fine. The post decisions with the music and other editing made it seem geared only for teenagers. And I think that's where the tonal mismatch is something that people have been talking about. Yeah. Nobody wants to see a Doc torture. I don't think James Gunn was gonna let that into the movie whatsoever. Lobo beheading editing was hilarious. Yep. But yeah, you know what? I do kind of get concerned a little bit about, like, when Ana Aguirre is talking about how she went about writing the ending. To me, as a screenwriter, I would have made more elegant choices with the story. And there's, I don't know, like, it's just, if anything, it shows, like, Supergirl can be a ruthless killer. Like, if you put a sword in her hand and a dude who deserves it, she will not hesitate to slit that throat. Does that make her a hero? Does that make her an anti-hero? And the fact that after that she goes back to Earth and says, okay, I've done my wild ways, I'm ready to work with you, Superman, I want to live on Earth. There's a bit of cognitive dissonance because it's still the same person who just slit a guy's throat, like, not minutes ago in movie time, but, like, however long it takes for her to get back to Earth in canon time. It's just kind of, the longer you think about it, the more it kind of makes you wonder. That's all. Figuring saying the movie was akin to Buzz Lightyear movie, not kid friendly enough, not adult enough. And that's also, I think, in and of itself part of the problem. Like, if a movie can't pick its lane, that's usually it's usually a bad reflection of the filmmakers, because a good script, a good well-directed movie is always going to know its audience. That's part of the process of when you write something. You gotta write for your audience. You can't just, write something that's kind of in, like, that weird middle ground where nobody really cares, So I think that's, again, part of what's going on with Supergirl. So, since you guys have stuck around for so long, let's talk about the Supergirl box office, shall we? what went wrong with Supergirl. So at the weekend, Supergirl did hit quite a few headwinds. It made 38 million at the box office domestically. The final number actually came in lower than that even. It made like 37.1 million, the final tally, which is below the lowest projections. Like I remember we were talking about it like a week, 2 weeks ago, like when the pre-sales were happening. I think on the high end, we were looking at 77 million, 68 to 77. Then the numbers started dropping. 40 to 50 going into the weekend was what they thought it would do. But they did say there's a scenario where it drops even lower than that and could do 38 million. That's what Warner Brothers reported on Sunday night. When the actuals came in Monday morning, the actual number came out 37.1 million. So that's below any projections. That pretty much, they were saying the worst case scenario, Supergirl could crater this badly because, you know, the cinema, and I was like, let's wait for the cinema score. And then Friday the cinema score was out and it was B-. And I'm like, John, I don't know, it's a little low. B- is a little low. Like, I am genuinely concerned that Supergirl is going to have a hard time making money at the box office, because it means that most fans, and the cinema score usually is a lot of polling for people walking out of theaters opening weekend, and a lot of people that go to see these movies opening weekend are the hardcore fans. They're us. And if so, the average score, the cinema score was B-. That's like, you know, I think that's the same score that Captain America Brave New World got. And we know how that movie did at the box office. So it's just, while there are people who liked it, even the ones who liked it address the shortcomings. Like, if you liked the movie and you gave it a 7.5, 8 out of 10, that's still, it's not quite perfect. It's a good distance from perfect. I mean, if 6 is average, then 7.5 is, you know, like, okay, I liked it, but I didn't love it. So like, and that's a B-. And that's concerning, because that means you're less likely to go see it again, to recommend it to other people or bring other people with you. Or if you do, you're not likely to do it for a while. Like, you're not like itching to go back and see it again. So, I mean, Eric hasn't seen it yet. So, sorry, Eric, I'm going to try to avoid spoilers where I can, but like, it is Monday. So, you know, and now Tuesday, depending on when you're watching this, but, yeah, 60 million would have been nice. Well, Toy Story 60 million, it just seemed really, really unrealistic though. And we'll see if they get a co-writer for Ana Aguera in the future. I like, I've talked about that before. I don't know if it's warranted just yet, but obviously Toy Story almost doubled that number, 37.1 million. It made 70 million. Toy Story 5, easily the top movie at the weekend. It only declined 56%. Like, it's great. It's gonna do great numbers next weekend, even with Minions coming out. Jackass, which they made for $10 million, and it was one of the movies that Paramount like hastily put together by putting together some of the old scenes from previous Jackass movies and filming a couple of new things, and just said, here we go, this is how we're gonna go from releasing 8 to 15 movies in 2026 for $10 million. That movie made its money back in its opening weekend with like 10 million just on domestic. Like, it was in the top 5. Like, I don't think Jackass Best in Class is gonna make more money than Supergirl, but I'm like, Supergirl has spent like over 150 million making, and Jackass has spent 10 million making, and you can talk about them in the same sentence because they weren't that far apart. So like, wow. So Terrence, you know what? The number for how much Supergirl needs to make to break even, depending on who you ask, and I'll go through a few different numbers here, but it generally is landing somewhere around $300 million, depending on who you talk to, and which insiders one of these trades is quoting. It needs to make around 300 million to break even, but that's probably a little optimistic in terms of whether it can actually do that or not. So that's, yeah, I mean, 315 I've seen, 325 I've seen. I think last week we were getting reports that 300 million from Warner Brothers insiders, but honestly, I don't think it gets anywhere close to that. It's just not going to make it. And you know what, this is why, because even abroad, Supergirl, when the actuals came out, they were reporting over the weekend that it was going to make 30 million internationally. And one of you guys came in earlier in the chat talking about how the Sunday numbers were higher than what actually happened. And that's never a good sign, because that means the studio, you know, overestimated, because they're not giving actuals until Monday when all the actual theater tallies get counted up. So if you add up the numbers, 37 million domestic, 25 million abroad, that's 62 million total worldwide at the box office. And I mean, Jackass made like 12 million, which again, like, you know, for a movie that they hastily put together, like, it's not good. It's not good at all. I mean, 62 million, it means that, you know, audiences are not connecting to it no matter where, like not in the US, not abroad. We know this movie is likely not going to do as well abroad, much like Superman, which Batman performs well abroad, but, you know, these super characters don't always do, you know, great number with international audiences because they're associated with like America, and, you know, America isn't really, I don't know, doesn't have the greatest PR right now with the rest of the world. And I know you're saying it's Superman, this is Supergirl, but like the S is the same, the colors are the same on the suit, so the general association still remains. But now the New York Times were kind of breaking it down a little bit more. They're going off the 38 million number. We know it actually is 37.1 million, the domestic box office, which this is the key statistics I want to point out here, because they said that the analyst projections, remember, going into the weekend, they were hoping for 40 to 50 million. Ultimately, the final tally came in around 24% below those projections. That's not a good sign at all. And they were talking about 30 million overseas. We know now that's 25 million. Not at all good. I mean, it's I checked it earlier. I'm gonna do a quick refresh on my end. I think on Rotten Tomatoes right now, Supergirl is sitting at 54%. It's got over 300 reviews, 301 as I tell you guys. And the popcorn meter hasn't improved either. Like now with over 2,500 reviews, it's sitting at 76%. So 54% for critics with over 300 reviews, and the average critic rating on Rotten Tomatoes is 5.6 out of 10, which is by definition mediocre. And then for audiences, they're slightly more generous. They're giving it an average of 4 out of 5, but still overall sentiment is 76%. So if that doesn't tell you like this movie is not a home run, then I don't know. Like, but we'll keep going into like the reasons why this is a problem. MTG is saying Peter Safran and James Gunn are trying to establish themselves and attract top talent like Craig Gillespie, but they needed to force some pickup shots and further editing. I think they did too much editing on this, MTG. I think they edited the shit out of this movie. Like I've already pointed out, like if you go back to our full review last Wednesday, there's shots in the movie that clearly were cut out of the film. There's significant shots of Krem. There's other sequences in the movie where you see shots in the trailers and different ad spots that didn't make it into the movie. And it's not like they took out entire scenes. They just felt like there were shots that were probably part of an extended version of the scenes that we did get in the movie. But ultimately they cut the scene, you know, to within an inch of his life. Like the opening sequence where Krem is, you know, offing Ruthie's family. Like they just didn't let the dread breathe. They're just like, you get into it right away, you're out, and before you know what it's done, and before you know it, we move on to the next thing. You don't really get to sit with the characters and their emotions for too long. The movie just seems to want to just keep going, and it's like, I know you were trying to get a sub 2 hour runtime, but I'm like, I think it was to the detriment of the film. Like if this had a runtime that was closer to Superman, which was like a 2 hours, 10 minutes, basically 20 minutes longer than Supergirl, I think that would have made a big difference. Like it would have made a big difference, and I think they had the footage to use. They could have used an extra scene on Argo City, so we can actually get to know more of the people. Maybe give us a friend that Supergirl Kara used to hang out with. Like they just made it seem like, oh, she has people that she knows, but the only people that we really know she cares about are her parents. I thought like Emily Beecham should have had a bigger role. Like they montage most of the Argo City stuff. It just felt weird, like that they were trying to like just cut this movie within an inch of his life for like what, for a couple extra screenings a day. Like it just, I clearly that's not worked out for them before, and it's not worked out for them here. Again, I'm speculating, but like Figueroa saying WB is in a catch-22 with Ana Negreira. Keep her and the stench follows, dump her and come off as too anti-woman reactionary. Well, that's what I don't think this is the thing. If Wonder Woman ends up having similar issues to Supergirl, then I don't think Ana Negreira gets to continue on to the next project. But I'm willing to give her at least another shot, because it's also a matter of like, I don't think the script, like what a writer puts into a script isn't ultimately what ends up on screen. A lot of things get added. I think Craig Gillespie deserves a lot more of the blame than Ana Negreira. I would give even more blame to Peter Safran and James Gunn, because they were the ones who were giving notes on the movie. So they clearly like the script, but I mean, I don't know. I'm not saying she deserves, no blame, but I just think like let her write the movie that she was working on already with Wonder Woman. Like Woman is also a very different character and a very different mythology. So it's not like if she couldn't do Supergirl well that she wouldn't be able to do Wonder Woman well. Like she could do a great job with Wonder Woman for all we know. So but yeah, MTG, you're pointing out like there were about 25 minutes. I remember talking about it on the show. There was a version of the movie that they were testing, which was over 2 hours long. And then we got to a point where Craig Gillespie, when he was in Brazil or CCXP or Mexico, I think it was, he talked about the movie's current edit at the time was an hour 50. Peter Safran said that in Brazil. So it looked like, yeah, they did cut out another 15-20 minutes from it, which I don't know, maybe they did too much. But we don't know what that extra 15-20 minutes were, but I certainly feel like maybe they should have left it in. Who knows? We'll see like what the deleted scenes are on the Blu-ray release. Maybe it will tell us a little more about what they cut out. I don't think they need a director's cut because Craig Gillespie probably did work on this pretty closely. So what you got was his version, unless there's some controversy we don't know about. But yeah, I talked about the B- cinema score. That's not good. That's not good at all. And you look at like what it did with the box office. Those numbers are closer to Morbius at the box office. Morbius actually made more in its opening weekend than Supergirl did. That's not a sentence I wanted to have been saying here. Now in the New York Times, they did say, and I feel like this is a little harsh, they're saying that female-led superhero movies have been rejected almost uniformly over the past 5 years or so, reflecting a resurgent misogyny among the core fan base, which is largely male. And while on the surface this seems like a pretty harsh statement, I think it's somewhat true. And you know what? I want you to hold on to that, because they are talking about how the fan base for this movie is largely male in the superhero genre. And it does matter because of the people that showed up to watch the movie and the people who didn't. Because there was reporting going on, and I will get into it later, we actually have the quotes, that when you look at the demographics for the people that showed up to this movie over the weekend, they were ideally targeting Gen Z women, and just the female crowd in general. Is Supergirl, most of the big characters in the movie, minus the villain and Lobo, are female characters. This movie should have drawn out the female crowd. Like where were the women at, and they didn't show up. And maybe it's the competition because they prefer to go Toy Story. They might have wanted to go see Backrooms again, or Obsession, which came in third this weekend. Whatever the case was, the largest demographic that showed up were male over 25. So the women didn't show up, and obviously we've seen how toxic the conversation online has become in the recent weeks about Supergirl, which is unfortunate because I don't think Millie Alcock deserves any of that hate. She's done nothing to deserve that, and she did a good job in the role that she was given to play. But it goes to explain why the movies didn't make a lot of money, because the people didn't show up. It's you vote with your wallet ultimately. So yeah. But anyway, they were talking about that here. Now, there was a quote here. This is the only direct quote from Peter Safran from this weekend I've seen. So I'm sure all these outlets reached out to him, but he did end up on a phone call with the New York Times here. And talking about the movie, what Peter Safran said was, while Supergirl didn't meet our box office expectations, it's just one component of a broader long-term strategy at DC Studios that we remain confident in, Peter Safran said to the New York Times. Now, as the co-CEO of DC Studios, he's got the greatest level of foresight on what's on the horizon for them and what they're working on, both what is publicly known and in private. So I will give him the benefit of the doubt, and I appreciate that he's admitting that, the movie did not meet their box office expectations. He's not talking around the problem. But I also appreciate what he's saying, that, look, this is one component of a broader long-term strategy. So just because we have one movie that did not do very well doesn't mean that we're going to all of a sudden toss the plan out into the trash and start from scratch. What he's saying is they're not going to be reactionary like the previous regimes of Warner Brothers were. And when they, all of a sudden panicked after BVS struggled at the box office, was, panned by critics and fans, even though it made like almost $900 million, they went and were like, Zack Snyder, we need you to completely redo Justice League. Oh, you're going to leave the movie to like go mourn the unfortunate death of your, like, just devastating passing of your daughter? Go ahead, but we're going to bring another director in so we can finish the movie without you. And here comes Joss Whedon. And then, down the hill, the snowball went, and the DCEU was already, you know, on the fringe, and then eventually obviously died. Hello, Harold. How are you doing, man? Thank you for joining in. Hit the like button while you're here. But I appreciate that Peter Safran is saying we're not going to be reactionary. We're going to stick to the plan. We have a plan. We're going to stick to the plan. And yeah, and look, Supergirl wasn't a perfect film. It's not just the release strategy. It's not just the fact that the character isn't as well known. It's not just that the women didn't show up, that demographic didn't show up for the Supergirl. I'm not saying no women showed up to watch the movie. I'm sure plenty of them did. But in terms of the dominating demographic that went to the movie based on the ticket sales, they were mostly men over 25. And you know, clearly they like Devil Wears Prada 2 made the money that it did because a lot of women went to see the movie. And a movie like this, you would expect that. So there's a lot of reasons why this movie didn't do well. Audiences didn't take to it well. It just goes on and on. But Peter Safran saying, we will learn our lessons, we will move on, and we're not going to all of a sudden take a hard left turn, is good. It's good because they're holding their nerves. There's always going to be a situation where, whether it was Supergirl or whether it was 5 movies down the road or was a Jimmy Olsen show, even the Peacemaker season 2 finale, I remember there was a lot of controversy, but people eventually got over it and they stuck with the plan. They're still doing what they're doing. There was always going to be a point where you were going to have a Thor: The Dark World. There was always going to be a point where you're going to make some kind of controversial, you know, project that was going to divide the fans. But like what Marvel has done is they've stuck to their guns, they've kept on going, and they've not let a single bad project ruin, you know, their plans for the next 5 years. They stick to they're like, okay, so we could take one bad movie if we keep going and the next 5 are good. So that's you know, a good sign that Peter Safran is not all of a sudden like saying we're gonna change, we're gonna really rethink how we're doing things today. And I'm sure James Gunn feels the same way, because that's what DC needs. That's what DC didn't have in the DCEU time. So, yeah. And I think Zack Snyder's Justice League kind of proved that out to a certain degree, honestly. But anyway, look, it's not that Supergirl, like one of the reasons why people are saying, oh, maybe not as many people are going to the movies. Maybe that's why Supergirl didn't do very well. But so far we're doing better than, you know, any year since the pandemic at the box office, and clearly people went to see the movies. They went to see Toy Story 3, they went to see Obsession, even Disclosure Day, Backrooms, even Jackass. It's just people didn't go to see Supergirl. So it just seems to be like, it's not that there's not people going to see the movie. In fact, according to Rentrack, which compiles box office data, in this article from the New York Times, theaters in the United States and Canada were expected to sell about $153.5 million in tickets in total this past weekend. And that would have been 18% up from the same weekend last year. And they weren't very far off the off the mark there. So it's not like, you know, people weren't going to the movies. It's just people were choosing other movies over Supergirl, which again seems to be the reason why Supergirl didn't do as well. Now, I'm sure some of you guys might have come across this before, but I do want to get into like what's going on with like how much money is it going to lose, right? Because we've talked about it. This movie wasn't cheap. I'm still a little surprised that the price tag is as high as it is, because like James Gunn was talking about it for a long time, that this movie cost them significantly less than Superman, which it did, because Superman's reported budget was $225 million. I remember like we were talked about it with tax breaks and stuff that they recouped on like the Ohio tax credit and some other stuff like that, filming in the UK. They were able to, the actual budget ended up being below 200 for Superman. For this, the reported budget is 170 million. Once you account for the tax credits, I believe James Gunn had implied that they spent less than 150 million. But even that still feels like a lot for a character that's, let's be honest, is not as well known as Superman. For most people, Supergirl is a derivative character of Superman. I know they want to position her as a lot more than that, and I really appreciate the direction they're going with it. But for the general audience, which you need to have a successful blockbuster, Supergirl is still the female version of Superman, which I realize that's not what a lot of us want it to be, but we aren't the general audience. We're like the hardcore fans. So this movie, if they did indeed spend 150 odd million dollars on it, apparently they also spent another 120 million marketing it, which we saw the report last week that in Variety they were talking about how, according to Warner Brothers, this has been one of their most, I think it was Deadline, this is one of their most successful marketing campaigns ever. They had like 80 promotional partners all over the world. They actually ended up getting $100 million of media value out of those partnerships, which isn't actually dollars. They're not like, actual cash dollars. It's more media value in terms of the marketing, free marketing that they got $100 million worth from all their partners. But apparently they still spent 120 million marketing it outside of that. Do the math. If they spend 150 million making it, 120 marketing it, they were like almost $300 million in on Supergirl. Honestly, in terms of, responsible spending, like, where the hell is your head at, DC Warner Brothers? Supergirl should not have cost you almost $300 million, like $270 to $300 million all in marketing and, production. That's way too much money. That is way too much money. Like, they should have spent at least 20 to 50 million less on making it, and they should have spent half as much on the marketing, because clearly none of that helped the movie eventually like make any more money. Because Variety's saying it here, the movie might lose $100 million. I'll get into it later, but Deadline, they mentioned that the number could be even higher. But what should they learn from the box office failure? That's a good question. Let me zoom into this. Of course, the final numbers that came in, 37.1 domestic, 62.6 global, just not high at all. Not high at all. I mean, the estimates were higher and it came in lower, which is never a good sign. It's going to be a big money loser for DC. It's going to be a big money loser. They're quoting the budget at 170 million, which I think it's likely to be a little less than that. But according to Jeff Bach of Exhibitor Relations, this was always going to be a tough hurdle for DC and Warner Brothers, because Supergirl isn't a character that has ever created an event-level blockbuster. True, the last movie came out decades ago, and most people don't remember it even exists. Like, duh, like it's never created a blockbuster event-level movie experience. Audience perception of Supergirl was not good. This was just a case of the film wasn't good enough to become an event. It just wasn't, clearly. Like, they're not wrong about this. Jalen saying they've been shitting on Millie in the movie and in professional. I know they have, and I'm not trying to get into that. I don't think most professional critics are saying, like, a lot of critics who don't like the movie still say Millie Alcock did a great job. I mean, there's gonna be like stupid idiots on the internet who will say things for the wrong reasons, and they just didn't want this movie to succeed no matter what, or they're just being misogynistic. This here, we're talking about hard numbers. Like, traditionally, a movie that has a spend of almost $300 million needs to earn at least 375 to break even, because of course movie theaters keep like a good chunk of it, about a third to 40% of the box office. Now, Supergirl, according to the sources for Variety, needs only around 300 million to break even. But only 300 million is a generous number when you're talking about where Supergirl is at the box office, having made 67 million in its opening weekend. That was 62 million in its opening weekend. To go from 62 million, they're projecting that worldwide is gonna probably finish up at around 210 million at most. And even that feels like a stretch, because domestically it's starting out at 37. In order to get to 100 million, it would have to almost triple that number. 3xing that numbers feels like a lot to ask for. And then internationally, would have to do even more than that. I genuinely don't think Supergirl is gonna even make 200 million, especially if they don't leave it in theaters for like 3 months from now. Like, it just, like, a 30 million marketing spend would have been better. 40 million would have been. It's just 300 million break-even point would have been good if the movie started off with $100 million opening weekend. It didn't even do that. So yeah, hi Chuck Rod. Going against Toy Story and Spider-Man around the corner was not a good idea. Yeah, and the Minions movie. I think it's that again, but I feel like it's not any single one of those things that caused this movie to fail. Speaking of what went wrong with Supergirl, I think it's all of these factors together. It's like when you see some kind of like big crash, like a big plane crash or a big car pileup, usually it's not one single thing that made that happen. It's usually death bathhouse and cuts, because once you get a snowball rolling downhill, there's a mistake here, there's a bad choice there, and then between the release strategy, between spending way too much money and making the movie and marketing it, and then we'll get into it later, not having really a big A-list cast. Not that it will have too much, but the biggest cast member in this we talked about was Jason Momoa. And he's known for Aquaman, which made $1 billion, but I don't know if like Jason Momoa is the biggest film star in the world. Neither is Matthias Schoenaar. So like they could have done better to maybe cast a bigger name for that. If you had the money, if you're spending 150 million, I'm sure you can afford to pay like a bigger actor to do the movie. I don't know. Like I'm like, where did that money go? But yeah, I mean, according to Variety, this movie could lose up to 100 million or more at the box office. But according to one of their sources who knows the financials behind the movie, that number is likely to be 80 to 85 million. So 80 to 85 million still depends on if the movie hits $200 million, which I just mentioned. I don't think this movie makes 200 million. So 80 to 85 million might still be a stretch. Like this movie is likely going to lose about $100 million. And it's not even the first movie this year that Warner Brothers is going to lose a ton of money on. The Bride only made $23 million and a $90 million budget. So that probably lost 50 million or more for them. The Mummy was a decent hit, like not really that well. Wuthering Heights was okay. They weren't like runaway hits, right? So it's nothing like what they were doing last year. So now we move on from this article. They did actually talk about in that same article how much did Millie Alcock get paid? Because this is the thing that they talk about in the Variety article, which they also mention here at comicbookmovie.com. Millie Alcock only got paid $400,000 for this movie. I remember we talked about it last year. While James Gunn got paid $15 million for Superman, David Cornsweet and Rachel Brosnahan both earned like $750,000. Not even $1 million. Nicholas Hoult got more. He got more than $1 million, I remember. But that's because he's more of a movie star. He demands a higher fee. But the two leads, like Superman and Lois Lane, did not really earn even $1 million each. And Millie Alcock earned even less. I mean, because her biggest credit is House of the Dragon. It makes sense. So that does help because that lowers the break-even point for this, because there's also been a report that there's not a lot of profit participation on this movie, meaning none of the actors in this movie or the director have back-end deals. So here they talk about it in the Variety article. They didn't have any A-listers like Joaquin Phoenix or Lady Gaga in The Joker Folie à Deux. And in that movie, like, those big actors and the director, they usually can negotiate first dollar gross deals, which basically means that the studio will owe them a certain percentage of the movie's box office before the studio recoups any profit on the movie, meaning whatever money the studio makes, a set percentage of that goes to the actors or the director, whoever has a back-end deal, before the studio gets the money, and then from there they determine the profit. That's the kind of thing that, I mean, Tom Cruise made like $100 million off Top Gun Maverick with that kind of a deal. But because they didn't have any A-listers, director or actors, at least they won't have to worry about that here, because pretty much all the money that the movie's going to make, all of that money is going to go to Warner Brothers on recouping their investment, which makes their, losses a little less, I don't know, hurtful, but I don't know. It's still not good because the box office isn't fantastic. Also curious, don't forget that Man of Tomorrow coming out in July of next year, and how many movies are coming out that month. Yeah, Hunter Iggy, we'll talk about that later, bro. But I will say Man of Tomorrow has a much more buzz around it. It seems like a bigger project. We'll worry about that another time, but we will get into it later. Summer movie months are always busy. There's enough money to go around. The problem is people just didn't go to see Supergirl. They went to see 10 other movies. I feel like more people will likely go see Man of Tomorrow, because even now, I remember we were talking about Supergirl 2 weeks before it came out, and more people wanted to talk about the Man of Tomorrow set photos, right? So the interest level is just completely different. Steven's saying, Dan, I question if Supergirl should have been the second movie. I agree with you. I think a lot of people are asking that question now. Like, why was the second movie out the gate Supergirl? Now, James Gunn has said, and we've talked about it before, that it was the movie that was ready to go. Like, the reason why Clayface is going to be the third movie is because Mike Flanagan submitted a script, which they could, like, rewrite to, mix it in with their cinematic universe and have it out the door faster. So they made the decision to do it. But if Clayface also underperforms, then you're going to be asking the question, like, maybe they should have just expedited the Batman development which it seems to be that maybe the Batman movie got delayed for the DCU because they just didn't want to do something that was gonna overstep into the same territory or mythology of the character that Matt Reeves was working on. So maybe having two Batman concurrently was a problem. But whatever the case was, when they initially announced the slate, guys, they announced Superman and they announced Batman. Those were the two movies that were going to be out the door first. They did announce Supergirl, but it was implied that Supergirl wouldn't be the second movie out the door. But clearly we don't even know when Batman Brave and the Bold is going to start filming. We don't even know if the script is done. We're just hinting at the idea of like, oh, maybe Tom Brittney is Batman. Who knows? Like, it's in hindsight, they probably should have put out a Batman movie or another bigger character out the door first. Second after Superman. Or they should have spent a lot less money on Supergirl. I feel like that's too much money. Like almost $300 million into it all in is way too much money for a movie for a character who's never been a big draw at the box office. Harold saying at this point, brush it off, put it on HBO Max by mid-July, just focus on promoting Lanterns and Clayface. There's just a lot of negativity around the whole thing, unfortunately. Well, I mean, there's negativity because everybody's jumping on the bandwagon of like, but I'm trying to like, look, we're trying to focus on the numbers and reasons why. We're not trying to like bash the movie because it's not a perfect movie. It's not the worst movie ever. It's a decent film. I think it costs too much and it has problems. It's imperfect, but I think they should keep the movie in theaters for as long as they can, because that's how you're going to make money back. Like, I don't think the answer is to rip it out of theaters in the next few days. Like, I think the answer is let it play for 2 months and see how it does. See if people go back to it and rediscover it down the road. But it is going to be a murderer's row of movies, because it's not like the road gets any easier. In July, you got the Odyssey and Spider-Man coming out. So I don't know if it's going to help keeping it in theaters for super long, but yeah, I think in hindsight, maybe Supergirl should have still had a role in Man of Tomorrow, but giving her own solo movie this early might have been an issue. This is what I talk about with like the early days of the MCU. They did a Guardians movie, but that was like 6 years after the MCU began, and they had an Avengers movie in the books, which kind of firmly like opened the door wide open on people liking MCU movies with over $1 billion. And they at that point had 3 Iron Man movies in the books, including $2 billion Iron Man movies. So yeah, I think this was a little too early for Supergirl. I think that's definitely and it is kind of interesting. I think Matt Reeves delaying the script, like not getting it down for the Batman Part 2 for so many years, also caused James Gunn problems because he wasn't entirely sure what Matt Reeves was doing, therefore what he could or could not do with his Batman. I think this is all, like, it's all ultimately connected, but I think like they made the wrong decision with Supergirl coming out this early. Yeah, Warner Brothers always pulls their movies out of theaters early. I think we've talked about it before. Disney definitely leaves their movies in theaters a lot longer, which, and you know, their movies do well for that. So it's always good to see them doing that. But let's keep on going. So now remember I mentioned Variety was talking about 120 million, maybe as low as 85 million loss. But according to Deadline, Supergirl could lose 125 million at the box office for DC and Warner Brothers, which is, that's rough. Like, that's rough. They kind of start this article off talking about Marvel. Back when Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2 came out, Kevin Feige was saying, when he was asked about, like, when it came to embracing those deeper B, C level characters in the comics, like Black Panther, Ant-Man, Kevin Feige was saying the biggest risk was not in doing them. The biggest risk would be doing Iron Man 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and 8. So basically talking about how, like, oh, we don't want to do like 5 more Batman, Superman movies. We want to use the full breadth of characters that we have in our library. And I understand that completely, which is why I think they've greenlit Supergirl. I get it. But when Kevin Feige was promoting Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2, they had done an entire trilogy of Iron Man movies. They had done an Avengers movie. They had, at that point, I believe they had already released 2 Captain America movies. They had released 2 Thor movies. And so at that point, I think you can afford to do a Black Panther movie. You could do an Ant-Man movie, which had been in development, the longest of any of them. And you could do a Guardians of the Galaxy, because you have set the groundwork. Like, it wasn't like, you know, they made the second movie in the MCU. The second movie in the MCU was The Incredible Hulk. And we know most people don't remember that movie today or look back on it very fondly. So I feel like Supergirl kind of slots into that a little bit. Both movies didn't make a lot of money at the box office. I don't think The Incredible Hulk cost as much as Supergirl did, though. So again, this could be a bigger loss for them. And it's just, I think it's one of those things where this is what it comes down to. A lot of these articles keep pointing out this thing, and you guys let me know in the comments what you think. Today, the superhero genre is not as popular as it was at its peak in the 2010s. So the average audience there's two things. One, they really need something unique that they haven't seen a million times before, because they've been watching superhero movies be the dominant thing at the box office for 20 years. So they need something new and different. That's what the Batman did with Matt Reeves. That's what Superman did last year. We see, like, you know, either nostalgia really hits, like with Deadpool and Wolverine or Spider-Man No Way Home, or you make a really genuinely good, unique, different kind of story, a new riff on your characters like the Spider-Verse movies, the audience will show up for those. But if you do something that feels familiar, that feels good, that feels kind of average, you've seen it before, it's not really something super unique, and maybe it's not even a character that you have, you know, known all that well, there's not as much of a, oh, it's a superhero movie, I'm gonna go see it. So people are more picky about what they go see. So that means when you're in that environment where your genre isn't like the every movie's a home run era, then you need to be more careful about where you allot the money and what, you know, characters you choose to highlight. Because in a shrinking economy, you want to focus on the safe bets. That's just how it works in business. And movie making is a business. So like Superman, Batman, Wonder Woman, those are your big hitters. You put those guys in great movies, even if their movies are not great, even if they're just good, they have a higher floor and a higher ceiling than a character like Supergirl, because Supergirl will need to earn that, you know, cachet with the audience that Superman, Batman, and Wonder Woman already have. So I think that's part of the calculus here, and I do think that the enthusiasm, I appreciate that DC got the budget to do this, and David Zaslav is really giving them, you know, the runway, but I don't know if, you know, David Ellison is going to do the same thing, because that company's going to have $100 billion in debt payments to take care of. So like they're not going to have the wiggle room to have big time flops like this. So again, it's one movie. It doesn't mean that every other movie is going to do that, but it does set an example of like, don't make this mistake. It's a pretty big mistake when you have to take 125 million write down because the movie sucked, like not sucked, but like shit the bed that hard. So like we probably, like at this point, I'm like, we need a Batman movie soon. I'm glad that the Batman Part 2 comes out next year, but I want to know what's going on with the DCU Batman before the end of the year. Because apparently, according to, I read somewhere that in one of these articles on the big trades, that one of the insiders has been saying that one of the priorities coming up for DC is the Bane Deathstroke movie. And I'm like, motherfucker, I do not give a shit about Bane and Deathstroke if I don't have a Batman movie out first. Like, I want to see that film, but I want to see Batman before I get that far. Like, you can't introduce characters that are defined by Batman that most people associate with Batman. Like, sure, they're doing Clayface, but the last thing you want is the Bane and Deathstroke movie and a Clayface movie out before you put out a Batman movie. Like, no, that's the wrong way of doing things. I'm kind of worried about the Jimmy Olsen show with Gorilla Grodd, but I'm like, that's streaming, it's different metrics, it will probably be fine. I'm not saying that they were going to need to postpone a completed script, although they could. Happen many a times. A perfectly good completed script, you know, takes long. Like, Marvel has sat on a movie for a year. Like, we see it all the time. Like, people, like, the studios will sit on a finished movie for a year if they have to. I'm not saying they should have done that. I'm just saying the Batman Brave and the Bold script should have been figured out faster. Or the Wonder Woman script. Like, Ana Naguera, apparently, like, based on all the reporting that we know, the timeline seems to be that she worked on Supergirl well before she worked on anything Wonder Woman related. And then it seemed like, you know, eventually James Gunn, like, you know, basically he admitted to the idea that, yeah, we did kind of fast track it. He was like, oh, no, I don't know if I would call it fast tracking. But then he went on to basically say they fast tracked Wonder Woman. So I'm like, they kind of knew, you know, and look, here's the thing. James Gunn and Peter Safran know Supergirl is probably not the best thing they could have put out. They saw this movie before we did. They won't say it out loud, but I bet you they knew that this movie might be in trouble. So, and they probably knew it well before we were ever gonna know it. So, yeah, I'm not saying maybe Batman, but like you could have made a Wonder Woman movie more of a priority. Like, I don't give a shit about Paradise Lost. Honestly, at the end of the day, like if they can that show, I wouldn't, lose any sleep over it. But I think if you don't have a Wonder Woman movie, you'll be in trouble. Like you need your big characters. And I know they're avoiding the Flash and, Aquaman because of PR reasons from the DCEU, but or I don't know, like whatever the other reason is. I know the Flash, they're doing it for PR because they want that character to breathe, but like you're putting Green Lanterns on TV before you put them on the movie. It just makes you worry some of these decisions could blow up in your face. That's all. That's all. And so far Supergirl is an example of that. Yeah, I mean, look, here's the thing though. I'm okay with Batman not having a cameo in Clayface because at this point it's like a catch-22. If you do a cameo, people are gonna say, "Oh, look, they're panicking. They put a Batman in a cameo in Clayface, especially if it's a post-credit scene, because it will feel like it's jammed in." Because up until now, they've been clearly saying we're not going to do Batman until his own movie. And I just mentioned all the reasons why it wouldn't work, because that means you would need to cast a actor, and you would need to figure out his suit, and you need to do all of that before you have done it for his own movie, meaning you haven't put in the amount of money, the effort that it takes to do the screen tests, to do the casting, to do the costume development. Like, they had Batman show up in BVS, and then he did the cameo in Suicide Squad. It wasn't the other way around. So I just don't think it's gonna that needs to happen or should happen. Yeah, the Flash definitely had some stank on it. Yeah. Anyway, so yeah, it looks like Supergirl needs 300 million to break even. It looks like it's gonna maybe get to 200 million, if that. And yeah, I mean, we've talked about how Craig Gillespie maybe was the wrong guy for the job. Yeah, it's just Peter Safran, on the other hand, has made some good comments about like they're gonna stick to their guns. And in addition to that New York Times quote, yeah, I mean, this is the same New York Times quote. So there you go. We've already gone through that one before. But what I was gonna say is, speaking of Craig Gillespie as a director, I think speaking of Aquaman, I think the better director for this movie, because this shot here in the movie is the perfect example of the color palette in this movie and the VFX, how a lot of it looked like bland brown and dusty, and kind of like, back in the day when TV shows didn't have enough budget to do a full CGI scene. Everything would look a little blurry so they could hide the bad VFX. It felt that way in this movie. And I don't know if it's because of the money or if it's just bad art direction, whatever. But here's a director that I think would have been a much better fit. No, I mean, yeah, Bane and Deathstroke could be supporting cast members. I just don't think you need to do their movie before you do a Batman movie. Like, don't prioritize that, before the Batman film. Then you can do their whole thing and do whatever you want to do with them. But I think the one director that could have really gotten this movie, I think what this movie needed, what Supergirl needed, was James Wan. James Wan could have been the perfect director for this movie. I don't know how much better or worse he would have been at directing Millie Alcock as Supergirl, and tapping into that, a character that's very feminine and is very imperfect and is very raw. I don't know if he would have been as good as that as Craig Gillespie, because Craig Gillespie, that's his specialty. But I don't think he would have been terrible at it, but even if it was a slightly, even if some things were done differently, I mean, the script was still written by Ana Neguera, and I'm sure they would have other consultants. But the point that I'm trying to make is, you look at Aquaman, if that movie may not be the best subjectively good movie or objectively good movie, but it looks great. The action, the action choreography is great. The cinematography is wonderful. The movie's colorful. It's one of the best looking movies in the DCEU, and I think James Wan could have come into Supergirl and he could have done a great job with the action direction, how things looked in those sequences. I bet you he more likely would have read the Supergirl Woman of Tomorrow comic book and said, "This looks fucking amazing. I want to bring this to life in the movie." And I think he would have done a much better job of, showing a scale, because for all the money they spent on this movie, like 150 million plus, this movie does not feel like they spent $150 million on it, $170 million on it. Like, it just didn't feel like it. You didn't feel that it was that big. Like, you didn't feel the scale, and I feel like that was, the director just not his forte. So he's not going out there with, like, storyboards that are, very specific, with giving you very specific direction to the camera team, the VFX team. Like, I need to pull this shot off. Like, James Gunn is good at that. Zack Snyder's good at that. Michael Bay is good at that. They're not all good at other things. Like, James Gunn is good at character work and the visuals. Zack Snyder, Michael Bay, not so much. But I think James Wan would have been a good fit. Like, I think James Wan could have done a much, much better job at this. Yeah, it is a late night. I'm almost done, but yeah, okay. It just kind of hurts to see that, the box office of Supergirl is going to be very comparable to Birds of Prey, to Morbius, to Blue Beetle, to The Flash. Actually made a lot less money than The Flash did, and might end up making less than what The Flash did in his final tally as well. So it's just, yeah. And quite frankly, if you were to blind watch Supergirl and not know it was part of the DCU, it felt closer to those 2023 DCEU movies than it felt to, like, Superman. So yeah, I think it's gonna put a lot of pressure on Green Lanterns to deliver, because that's something that apparently HBO is really high on. That they've done a really good job with this, with the True Detective inspiration. But yeah, I know that they're trying to, like, Peter Safran said in another interview that he wants to rebuild trust that DC had lost over the years. This is the quote that he had. He was talking to BBC about this. He was saying, I want to rebuild the trust of the audience, which I think DC had lost over the years with, like, the DCEU. That which unites comic fans is much greater than which divides us. Talking about DC and Marvel, the rivalry. But this movie doesn't help that cause. So ultimately, I do worry a little bit about, again, the audience is certainly losing more trust over the brand, over Supergirl, than not. But it is a good sign that, again, they're not going to change course. They're going to keep, they're going to stay the course with this. And like you said, Lanterns is going to have a lot of pressure on it. I don't think it's going to be Supergirl all over again. It's still an HBO show. I trust the people on the show. I mean, I was still, like, you still have Damon Lindelof on it, but John hates Damon Lindelof. I think Damon Lindelof is one of the outstanding, writers and showrunners they've got at DC, and they've already got a showrunner for season 2. And then success on streaming is a lot different than success at the box office, and it's less directly measurable by the public. So as much of the bad PR for Supergirl as we are seeing, you're not going to see nearly as much for Lanterns, even if it is as much of a miss as Supergirl. So I think Lanterns, while there's more pressure on it, I think it will be fine. But I do worry, because you guys tell me to. One thing I wanted to quickly mention here before I finish up. I've noticed, like, Josh Brolin passed on the Lanterns role. They offered, I think, was it Daniel Craig was offered a role in one of the upcoming projects was it Clayface or something? Like, there's been a bunch of, like, big A-listers like Matthew McConaughey and stuff that were attached to these projects that ultimately ended up not getting it. And unlike Supergirl had the money to pay an A-lister to do a villain turn, but the lack of A-listers, I'm not saying it's the defining factor in these movies not working well, or like they will really drive up the box office, but it does concern you, like, at some level, like, are we gonna get some big stars? Like, it gives, if not the box office bump, it certainly gives you that extra level of credibility. Like when Robert Redford showed up in The Winter Soldier, people were like, oh, Marvel's made it now. You got Robert fucking Redford in your cinematic universe, or like Glenn Close showed up for a small role in the Nova Corps, like for the Guardians movie, and it's like, you got Glenn Close. Like, it gives you credibility, and I feel like we need more of that. Yeah, Daniel Craig passed on the Matt Reeves movie, which seems like a weird decision, but Daniel Craig is Daniel Craig. Yeah, you know what, Harold, you're probably right. I think the DC movie's reputation has just been so in the dumps. Maybe it's gonna take a pattern of big hits for them to be able to get back to that level where they're able to attract the bigger names. I do worry though, like, 3 of the first 5 movies in the cinematic universe are all Superman or super family focused. Again, beating the dead horse about, we need Batman, we need Wonder Woman, you need to bring more Justice Leaguers into the frame. The the Lanterns on HBO is good, but I would rather have Lanterns on the big screen. Like, people are gonna eventually tap out of seeing Superman stuff. And let's be honest, I keep saying it. DC's the house that Batman built. Detective Comics, not action. It's not AC Comics. It's DC Comics. So, and you know, Batman performs much better internationally than Superman. So, I don't want to be back here next year and the year after talking about how last year Superman underperformed internationally, this year Supergirl shit the bed, next year Man of Tomorrow underperforms internationally. Like, I think we need some of those other characters that are more surefire hits. Like, Wonder Woman 1984 was a casualty of the pandemic, also was a lesser than the first one, but the first Wonder Woman movie made over $700 million. Like, people will show up for those characters. So yeah, anyway, let's see. James Gunn shouldn't be running a studio. Yeah, that's fine. Nobody cares. James Gunn's fine. I think, again, it needs multiple things need to go bad for this too. Yeah, one flop won't destroy a franchise. And you know what? Ultimately, like I was saying, the Batman 2 Part 2 is coming. It's, winning fixes everything. So when the Batman Part 2 comes out, I'm sure that's going to alleviate a lot of James Gunn's troubles, which we'll see if he's still around, because, his contract's still up for negotiation next year. He's got an extension till next summer. So, but here's the thing. I still enjoyed Supergirl. I think it's not a movie that should have spent this much money on, and they shouldn't have released it where they did, because unless it was a big home run, clearly there's too much competition for it to compete with, and it's not a very well-known character. And we're seeing the impact of that. Hello, Bane, saying, I hear Dan talking bad about my movie with Deathstroke. Be careful. The darkness shall consume you. I hope not. I'm not saying I don't want to see a Bane Deathstroke movie. I just don't want that to be the next big priority. I'd rather see the Batman movie first. The Batman Part 2, yes. But I want to see the DCU Batman established, because it's his orbit that Gotham City, every other character orbits in. So then give me the Bane Deathstroke movie. I just don't want to see, I don't want to see the dynamic duo movie come out, a Bane Deathstroke movie come out, a Clayface movie come out, and then we eventually get to Batman. That's Batman first, then the other characters, because every single one of those characters we know by virtue of knowing about Batman. It would be the same as you do a Brainiac movie, and then a Metallo movie, and then a Mr. Spitlick movie, and a Supergirl movie, and then you give us a Superman movie. It should be the other way around. That's all I'm saying. Yeah. So Jalen saying, I'm going to say it right now, Batman 2 would not be a win for James. Do not understand that this is still a DC studio movie and would be a win for... Well, no, it's still all under the DC umbrella now. It's not going to be released... I mean, it's officially under a DC umbrella. So it's going to be a win for DC as a whole. If Joker Folie à Deux did really good, it would still be counted as a DC win. I know they're publicly distanced themselves, Peter Safran and James Gunn didn't have anything to do with it, and Todd Phillips didn't take their notes. But if it was a big hit, trust me, it would have reflected well on DC as a whole. Same thing for the Batman Part 2. So yeah, but anyway, on that note, I think I've run out of things to talk about, so we'll wrap it up there. It's been a long show. We're back tomorrow with DCU Daily. We're back tomorrow with Tier List Tuesday. Looks like the winning topic is 10 things that happened before GTA 6. Unless you guys vote to change that by this time tomorrow, that's going to be the topic we'll be doing. Liz is on tomorrow. She's going to do Liz at the Movies. She's seen a bunch of movies, including Minions, which is coming out this week. So yeah, we'll get into all of that. Look, if you guys want to support the movie, go watch Supergirl multiple times. It will only help the box office, and Supergirl can use your money, I might go see it another time too. So it's definitely worth a watch. It's definitely worth a second watch. But until tomorrow, I'll let you guys go, and till next time, hit the like button, hit the subscribe. We're here 5 days a week, and we'll see you tomorrow. Another episode of DCU Daily.
It's another project that's been blessed from the beginning.
There's the shot right there. That.
Okay, we don't need to see
right there.
Hey, buddy. Eyes up here.
Now you want to get nuts? Let's get nuts. Here we go.
Victory mine. Ask me how am I doing? I'm telling you, really, I'm doing sublime. I never wait in the stewardess line. I just go do it. I'm moving my time. Really had nothing to do with it. How am I moving? I'm moving like you want to shine. Follow my lead. Don't listen to lies. I had to put me all in the line. That's why I know that victory's mine.
I prefer Jared Leto.
Hunka hunka!